Okay, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the regular council meeting of March 12th. Before we start the meeting, just a few housekeeping items. If you have a cell phone, if you can please turn it to off or to vibrate. All personal information collected will be managed in accordance with the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act, the FOIP Act. That please note these council meetings are being live streamed, recorded, and retained. As part of the public hearing, if you're addressing council, public hearing, you have 5 minutes to address council and then questions may follow. If I could ask you to please come forward to the mic, it will be live. And if you could please state and spell your name for the record, we just like to ensure that we have all of the information correct for the minutes. So with that, I will start with introductions and I'll start with Christopher, please.
Good morning, Christopher Atchin, Director of Legislative Community and Agricultural Services.
Good morning, Margareta Bloom, Director for Planning and Development Services.
Good morning, Jeff Holmes, Chief Administrative Officer.
Morning, Greg Harris, Division 2.
Good morning, Jennifer Lutz, Division 7.
Good morning, Alan Miller, Division 3.
Good morning, Angela Albers, Division 5 in Reeve.
Good morning, Peggy Johnson, Division 6.
Good morning, Tiffany Nixon, Division 4.
Good morning, Dwayne Fulton, Division 1.
Laura Catmans, Executive Assistant.
Good morning, Abdulu Gonzalez, Planner.
Good morning, Jessica Ross, Assistant Director of Planning and Development Services. Good morning, Shelley French, Communications.
Thank you. And we do have an agenda in front of us. Is there any additions to the agenda? So I would like to propose an addition adding to 12.2 in the closed session, committees of council under FOIP section 24. Okay. There's no further additions or discussions on the agenda. Could I have a motion to accept the agenda as amended? Councillor Johnson?
Yes.
Thank you. Any further discussion? I will call to question. All in favor? And that motion's carried. We have regular council minutes of February 26, 2025. Is there any addition, or is there any errors or omissions in those minutes? No? Seeing none, looking for a motion to adopt the minutes. Moved by Councillor Miller. Thank you. Any further discussion? I'll call to question. All in favor? And that motion is carried. And before we start the public hearings, I just want to let everyone know that we do have a delegation at 11:30, the South McDougall Flats Well Testing Project Program. So wherever we are in the agenda, we will be breaking and moving towards that delegation time. So with that, we'll move on to 4.1. We'll start with the public hearings. So this is for bylaw number LU 03/25, being a bylaw of Mountain View County in the province of Alberta to amend land use bylaw number 1024 affecting the northeast 32-32-3 west of the 5th pursuant to the Municipal Government Act. This received first reading on February 12th, 2025. And with that, I will open the public hearing and turn it over to planning, please.
Thank you. The presentation for item 4.1 begins on page 20 of the agenda package. The applicant is Keith Schellenberg, and the landowner is under a cattle company owned by John Morgan. The proposal is within Division 6. The applicant proposes the reassignation of 2.02 acres to Country Residential 1 District in order to create a first parcel out subdivision from a previously unsubdivided quarter section. The subject property is located between Olds and Sundre in the rural community of Harmattan. Land uses in this area are predominantly agricultural, with the exception of a few residential parcels to the west and south from this proposal. The topography regularly slopes from the west to the east towards the Dog Pound Creek flowing farther to the east. On this property, soils have CLI Class 3 with AgriSeeds Land Suitability Rating System Class 100% 3 as first dominant. The county's farmland assessment identifies the majority of the property as good to very good arable, while the proposal is in an area rated as 13%, which is good to very good pasture. No environmental significance were identified on the property. Within the vicinity, there are some low-lying areas identified as marshlands. Oil and gas activity in the area relates to several natural gas lines and oil well effluent lines and related wells. The proposal for residential purposes is on the east side of the property adjacent to Range Road 34. As explained by the applicant, the proposal is located in an area at the bottom of the hill that is not taking up good farmland. The area is surrounded by mature trees in an area that will allow sufficient space for development and services. The historical aerial photographs and the file history demonstrates that the land has always been used as farmland, except the eastern area, which is used as pasture. In accordance with Figure 3 of the Municipal Development Plan, the subject property is in the agricultural preservation area, which policies generally supports undeveloped residential parcels between 2 to 3 acres in size in areas not conducive for agricultural from unsubdivided quarter sections like this proposal and subject to redesignation approval. The proposal meets the policies of the agricultural preservation area. These are set lines looking north and south along Range Road 34 and the potential area for future access approach. Here we're looking southwest from the northeast corner of the proposal. And on this picture, we're looking west at the central area of the proposal. The remaining land is currently accessed directly from Highway 27. Alberta Transportation have no issues with this proposal, and the current access is to remain on a temporary basis. Existing development within the remaining land consists of a barn and corral area and a cabin that is currently used as a residence. On this picture, we're looking east. We're looking east towards the proposed area. And on this picture, we're looking at the opposite direction to the northwest. Planning and Development is in support of this proposal as it meets the policies of the Municipal Development Plan and the regulations of the Land Use Bylaw. This concludes my presentation, and the applicant and landowner are in the gallery if council has any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Does the applicant have any new or additional information they would like to provide?
Good morning. My name is Keith Schellenberg. That's Keith, last name Schellenberg. I'm the applicant for this. I've lived in that valley since I was 6 years old. I've lived in that residence that we saw in the picture, that small cabin, for the last 20 years. It's time in my life that I own property, can build a house and maybe start a family. This area, me and Mr. Morgan have looked at, and like stated, it's not in an area that is farmable for any seeding or anything like that. It is just pasture land, and it'll give me a space that I can have some trees that are mature that I could maybe build a little house in and start a life in. So that's what I have. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Is there anyone in the gallery who would like to speak in favor of this application? Is there anyone in the gallery who would like to speak in opposition to this application? Is there anyone online who would like to speak either in favor or in opposition to this application? Just looking for, no, so we don't have anyone online who wants to speak either in favor or in opposition to the application. So I will open the floor for council's questions. No, seeing no questions then, I will ask if planning has any closing comments.
No, thank you.
Okay, and does the applicant have any closing comments? No, the applicant waives. So with that, I will close the public hearing and I will look for a motion. Councillor Fulton.
I'll move that council give second reading to bylaw LU 03/25, redesignating the lands within the northeast 32, west of the 5th.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I will call to question. All in favor? And that motion is carried. And Councillor Fulton.
I'll further move that council give third reading to bylaw LU 03/25, redesignating the lands within northeast 32, west of the 5th.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, I will call to question. All in favor? And that motion is carried. We'll move on to 4.2. This is bylaw number 0425, being a bylaw of Mountain View County in the province of Alberta to amend land use bylaw number 1024 affecting the Southwest 1633-7 west of the 5th pursuant to the Municipal Government Act. This received first reading February 12th, 2025. With that, I will open the public hearing and I will turn it over to planning, please.
Thank you. The presentation for item 4.2 begins on page 50 of the agenda package. The applicants are Sam Misfoot and Tammy Morin, and the landowner is Sam. The proposal is located within Division 5. The application proposes the reassignation of 5 acres to Country Residential District in order to create a third title within a previously subdivided quarter section. The subject property is located within the Bearberry-Colcam rural community, approximately 14 miles northwest from the town of Sundre. Land uses in the area are predominantly zone agricultural for either small or large agricultural pursuits. This area is in the foothills and it is rolling. Overall, this area is characterized by the Bearberry Creek and 3 named tributaries, being Kelly, Berry, and Smith Creeks. On this property, soils have Canada Land Inventory Class 5, and the southern area, as well as the proposal, have organic soils. The Agrasys Land Suitability Rating System for the majority of the land and the proposal is rated at 80% because soils have unsuitable soils due to drainage, and 20% of the soils have severe limitations to growth due to temperature. And the county's farmland assessment rated the proposed area as poor to fair arable. The environmental scan shows that there is an environmental significant area level 4, which is a connector 2 that connects the James River ESA level 2 to the north with the Benz Lake ESA level 3 to the south and east. Within this property, the Alberta Merged Wetland Inventory identifies a large fenned and marsh area. The wetlands are part of an environmental significant area level 4. This connector is characterized by riparian and wetlands areas throughout, the Temple Creek to the north and others flowing through. Oil and gas relate to natural gas lines, some of which service residences in the area. Specific to this property, the proposal is approximately 3.87 meters from a natural gas pipeline right-of-way located in the southwest and approximately 91.21 meters to the 100-meter oil well buffer located to the south. Understanding that the property has some challenges with respect to the oil and gas activity, wetlands, and the level 4 ESA, the proposal is located in the north central area adjacent to Township Road 332A. Half of the proposal contains a large plateau which have the soils conditions appropriate for development. The remaining southern area is part of a large shrubby area. In consultation with development services, future development may require setback relaxations. The historical aerial photograph shows that other than the 2 existing developed yards, there has been no observable change within this property. In accordance with Figure 3 of the Municipal Development Plan, the proposal is in the potential multi-lot residential development area, which policies allow up to a maximum of 4 titles, inclusive of the remaining land, subject to redesignation approval and criteria, which the proposal was able to comply with. The property is also identified within the Bearberry-Red Deer River Corridor Area Structure Plan. More specifically, the proposal is in the potential multi-lot residential areas as identified in Map 3. The ASP policies are guided by the policies of the Municipal Development Plan. Therefore, the proposal of 5 acres in size meets the policies of the Area Structure Plan. These are set lines looking west and east along Township Road 332A and the potential area for a future access approach. Operational services confirm no issues with the proposal having a future access directly off this road. On this picture, we're looking south from the northwestern area. This is the area where it is in a plateau that is for future development. And here we're looking south from the north central area. And again, we're looking directly at that plateau area that is conducive for development. The remaining land currently access the property directly off Range Road 74. This road was upgraded by the county in 2002. Development on the remaining land consists of a dwelling unit and an attached garage with a shop. Here we're looking northeast towards the proposal from this picture was taken from the driveway. And here we're looking eastward towards the proposed area from Range Road 74. Planning and development is in support of this proposal as it meets the policies of the Municipal Development Plan and the Bearberry-Red Deer River Corridor Area Structure Plan, and the proposal is in compliance with the regulations of the land use bylaw. This concludes my presentation, and the applicants are in the gallery if council has any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Does the applicant have any new or additional information they would like to provide? No, the applicant waits. Is there anyone in the gallery who would like to speak in favor of this application? Is there anyone in the gallery who would like to speak in opposition to this application? Is there anyone online who would like to speak either in favor or in opposition to this application? Okay. Seeing none, I will open the floor for council questions. Councillor Johnson.
You referred to the area as shrubby, and I wondered if you could give us some idea of what kind of shrubs grow in this area. I guess in particular, I'm looking at the agenda page 55 that looks at the soil type and wondering what's growing there.
Well, I discussed the aerial photographs with the agricultural specialists here in the county, based on this on the vegetation that we could see and the pictures that I was taking. She identified it as shrubby because they're very low and they have the conditions of kind of the forest, like the layer bottom. It felt like this, based on the vegetation, that it is a kind of a shrubby area.
Thank you.
Okay, is there any other questions from council? No? Seeing none, I will ask if planning has any closing comments.
No, thank you.
Thank you. And does the applicant have any closing comments? No, the applicant waits. And so with that, I will close the public hearing and I will look for a motion, please. Councillor Harris.
I'll move the council gives second reading to bylaw LU 0425, redesignating the lands within the Southwest 1633-7 west of the 5th.
Thank you. Any discussion? Councillor Johnson.
The reason for my question is when you look at page 55, it indicates that the landform is hummocky and the soil type is 0 to 4, 0 being organic. And certainly when you look at the photographs, it looks like a really, really low area to me. So I'm wondering, I was concerned whether or not this was a high enough elevation to be a proper building envelope. During drought years like we've had, certainly it looks adequate. During wet years, maybe not so much.
Okay, is there any other discussion? Seeing none, I will call to question. All in favor? And that motion's carried. And Councillor Harris, please.
I'll further move that council give third reading to bylaw LU 0425, redesignating the lands within the Southwest of 1633-7 west of the 5th.
Thank you very much. Any further discussion? I will call to question. All in favor? And that motion is carried. And we will move on to agenda item 4.3. This is bylaw number LU 0925, being a bylaw in the province of Alberta to amend land use bylaw number 1024, affecting the southeast 2934 west of the 5th pursuant to the Municipal Government Act. This received first reading on February 12th, 2025. And with that, I will open the public hearing and turn it over to planning, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The presentation starts on page 85. The applicants and landowners are David and Patricia Rigsby. The application is proposing to redesignate an approximate 71.37 acres from Agricultural District A to Agricultural 2 District A2. This slide shows the location map. The subject lands are located in the rural community of Elkton Rugby, approximately 7 kilometers north of the village of Cremona. The next slide is the Figure 3 growth management conceptual strategy of the MDP and shows that the proposal is located within the potential multi-lot residential development area. This slide shows the redesignation site sketch. The application is seeking to redesignate an approximate 71.37 acres of bare land to Agricultural 2 District. The subsequent subdivision application is seeking to create the third title for the quarter. Page 89 of the agenda is the surrounding land use map, which shows that the subject quarter is surrounded predominantly by agricultural land uses. The quarter to the north is split zoned with agricultural and country residential zoning. The quarter to the south has 2 residential parcels, and the remainder is split zoned with agricultural and direct control zoning. The next slide shows the oil and gas facilities map. The proposal contains 1 operating oil well effluent pipeline, 1 development well that is pumping oil, 1 crude oil single well battery. There are also Cochrane Lake gas co-op lines that run throughout the quarter and service the development both on the remainder and in the existing subdivision. The necessary oil and gas facility operators were notified during the referral process and did not respond with any conditions or concerns. As the manner in which the land is being used is not intended to change, existing oil and gas facilities should have a minimal impact on the proposal. This slide shows the topography and water map for the area. There is an unclassified creek within the subject quarter. Little Red Deer River runs through the quarters to the northeast, east, and southeast. There's also a large open water wetland in the quarter to the north. Page 92 of the agenda shows a closer look at the subject quarter. According to AgriSid, the quarter has a landform that is considered inclined to steep, low relief. The quarter is more elevated towards the west and slopes downwards towards the east and towards the creek. Since the agricultural use of the quarter is not intended to change with this application, the natural features should be minimally impacted. This next slide shows the environmental scan map. No environmentally significant areas have been identified within the subject quarter. The quarter to the north contains a level 4 ESA surrounding an open water wetland, and the quarters to the east contain a level 1 ESA surrounding Little Red Deer River. Alberta Merged Wetland Inventory data does not indicate that there are any wetlands within the subject quarter. This slide shows historical aerial images of the subject quarter. These aerials show that the proposal has always been farmed separately from the remainder. This next slide shows soil information for the quarter. According to Canada Land Inventory, the quarter contains Class 5 soils. According to AgriSid, the quarter has soils with severe limitations due to temperature and slope. The farmland field sheet shows that most of the quarter contains soils with a farmland assessment rating that ranges from 34 to 43%. The soils with the greatest limitations appear to surround the creek and the treed areas in the quarter. Page 96 of the agenda is the site dimension sketch showing the proposed parcel north of the creek. The proposal has been configured so that the creek will be contained within the proposed remainder. The next slide shows some of the proposal's approximate boundaries. Photo A was taken near the parcel's southeast corner looking northwest. Photos B and C were both taken near the quarter's northeast corner. Photo B looks southwest and shows the agricultural lands within the proposal, and photo C looks west following the northern boundary's fence line. This slide shows more photos of the proposal taken centrally near the oil well. Photo A looks northwest, photo B looks west, and photo C looks north. The lands in the proposal have historically been used for hay crops and pasture. The next slide shows images of the proposal looking towards the proposal's southern boundary. The southern boundary follows an existing fence line on the north side of the creek, leaving the creek and surrounding treed area fully within the proposed remainder. You can see that there is no way to cross farm equipment through this treed creek area to farm the proposal with the remainder of the quarter. The application is looking to subdivide a piece of land that is already being farmed independently from the rest of the quarter. The following slide shows images of the creek and its surrounding topography, exhibiting the creek as the low point of the quarter. Photos A and B look west towards the creek, and photos C and D highlight the decrease in elevation as the land slopes towards the creek. Keeping the creek entirely within the remainder allows for better management of the creek by minimizing the number of parcels that it is spread across. Page 101 of the agenda shows images of the agricultural uses in the proposed remainder, which are intended to continue. Photo A shows pasture located northeast of the farmstead, and photos B and C show the cultivated lands to the west of the farmstead, and photo D shows livestock pens and an old agricultural building. The proposed remainder would contain all of the development within the quarter. This development consists of a dwelling, a Quonset, a garage, a carport, a shed, a sea can, 4 RVs, and some old agricultural buildings. This slide looks at access and sightlines into the proposal from Range Road 44. During the circulation process, a non-conforming road inspection was completed as Range Road 44 was identified as being less than 7 meters wide. The operations department confirmed that the proposal would have minimal impact on local roads. The next slide shows the 2 accesses into the proposed remainder from Township Road 304. The approach on the right is the main approach into the farmstead. The approach on the left was used to access a mobile home, which burned down in 2023 and is no longer present on the property. During the non-conforming road inspection, the operations department noted that the approaches to both the proposal and the remainder meet county standards. Page 105 of the agenda looks at the agricultural land use policies from Section 3 of the Municipal Development Plan. The subject lands are located within the potential multi-lot residential development area, which is a policy area that can support a maximum of 4 titles per quarter section. The proposal is contemplating the creation of a third title and complies with the MDP's Figure 3 Growth Management Conceptual Strategy. Policy 3.3.7 states that the minimal parcel size for a new agricultural parcel should be 40 acres and should reflect the existing conditions and use of the land. The proposal is seeking to create a new agricultural parcel with an approximate area of 71.37 acres, which complies with this size requirement. The southern boundary of the proposal is a fence line following the unclassified creek, which naturally divides the land. The lands north of the creek and south of the creek have always been farmed separately. The placement of the proposal's boundaries reflect the features and use of the land and comply with policy 3.3.7. Policy 3.3.23 outlines the requirements for legal physical access to parcels. Both the proposal and the proposed remainder have existing accesses. During the non-conforming road inspection, the operations department noted that accesses to both the proposal and the remainder meet county standards. So the proposal is able to comply with policy 3.3.23. Administration can support a resolution of approval for this proposal. The proposal is within the parameters described in the municipal development plan and the land use bylaw. During the circulation process, there were no concerns received from referral agencies or adjacent landowners. The proposal complies with the policies of the statutory plan and the regulations of the land use bylaw. This concludes my presentation, and the applicants are available in the gallery if you have further questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Does the applicant have any new or additional information they'd like to provide? No, the applicant waives. Is there anyone in the gallery who would like to speak either in opposition or in favor to this application? Is there anyone online who would like to speak either in opposition or in favor to this application? Sorry, I believe we have someone online, so we're just waiting.
Hello?
Okay, so we do not have anyone that would like to speak either in favor or opposed to this application online. So with that, I will open the floor to council for questions. No? I just have one. Could we please pull up page 93 of the agenda? This is more of a general question, but normally we see ESAs along most of the tributaries, and this seems to be very blocky and doesn't include any ESAs along that main tributary. But from the photos, it looks like it would fit an ESA type area. Just wondering how we deal with this moving forward.
So through the chair, again, on what is shown on page 93 of your agenda is from our summit report, a 2008 consultancy report that identifies environmental significant areas in 4 different categories, category 1, 2, 3, and 4, with 4 being the lowest. So again, when the study was conducted, it was done with information that the county had available, as well as desktop information. So that didn't result in ground truthing when going on to private landowners' parcels. So what you will see in some instances, for the most part, it follow features of main, waterways, etc. But not in all cases will it align with the tributaries to those main creeks, rivers, and streams. So what we do in case like this, where there are no environmental significant areas identified, we will still evaluate the proposal on the information submitted by the applicant, the information that we have available in our GIS, and ultimately doing the site visit. So looking at environmental protection through our standard subdivision condition 13 is one that we will always consider if there are these features on the landscape.
Thank you. Is there any additional questions? Councillor Letts? Nope, that's all right. Okay, so with that, I will ask if planning has any closing comments.
No closing comments. Thank you.
Thank you. And does the applicant have any closing comments? No, the applicant waits. So with that, I will close the public hearing and I will look for a motion. Councillor Letts, please.
I move that council give second reading to bylaw number LU 0928, redesignating the lands within Southeast 2934 West 5.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? No? I was pleased to see this one come forward. I always like to see a parcel come forward where it's appropriate with the setbacks to creeks and valleys where you can actually put in a good fence line. So I was pleased to see that the setback on this would definitely allow that. So I think the configuration is good on this parcel. Okay. So with that, then I will call to question. All in favor? And that motion's carried. And Councillor Letts, please.
I further move that council give third reading to bylaw number LU 0925, redesignating the lands within Southeast 2934 West 5.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I will call to question. All in favor? And that motion's carried. We'll move on to agenda item 4.4. This is for bylaw LU 1025, being a bylaw of Mountain View County in the province of Alberta to amend land use bylaw number 1024, affecting the Southeast 1331-5 west of the 5th pursuant to the Municipal Government Act. This received first reading on February 12th, 2025. And with that, I will open the public hearing and turn it over to planning.
Thank you. The beginning of the presentation starts on page 121 of the agenda. The applicant and landowners are Gerard and Karen Kalsar. The application is proposing to redesignate an approximate 4.0 acres from Agricultural District A to Country Residential District. This next slide is a location map and shows that the subject quarter is within the rural neighborhood of Fallen Timber, approximately 25 kilometers south from the town of Sundre. This next slide is the figure 3 map from the municipal development plan and shows that the proposal is within the potential multi-lot residential development area. Page 124 of the agenda is the redesignation site sketch. The application is seeking to redesignate an approximate 4.0 acres of bare land to Country Residential District. The subsequent subdivision application is seeking to create the third title for the quarter. The next slide is the surrounding land use map. The subject quarter is surrounded by a mix of residential and agricultural land uses. There are residential zone lots in the quarters to the northeast, east, and south. 3 of the neighboring quarters are currently unsubdivided. 3 contain 2 titles and 2 contain 3 titles. This next slide shows the oil and gas facilities map. Facilities surrounding the subject quarter are concentrated to the west, where you can see there are TC Energy pipelines, as well as a natural gas pipeline. There's also a gas well to the south, and surrounding facilities do appear to be well removed from the proposal. Within the subject quarter, you can see there is an operating natural gas pipeline that runs along the north side of the quarter. This facility is well removed from the proposal. The remaining gas lines are Foothills natural gas lines that are used to service the development within the subject quarter. Page 128 of the agenda is the topography and water map for the area. South of the subject quarter, you can see Elkton Creek that is located within a subglacial channel. Areas to the northwest and southeast slope towards this channel. According to Agrisid, the topography for the area is considered either hummocky or undulating, with some areas having inclined to steep landforms. Looking at the subject quarter, you can see that it is more elevated along its west boundary and generally slopes down to the east. The proposal is located along a gentle east-facing slope along the south portion of the quarter. The next slide shows an environmental scan map. You can see that Elkton Creek to the south is surrounded by a level 2 environmentally significant area, which has also been identified as containing potential hazard lands. The next slide looks closer at the subject quarter, which does not contain any identified streams, wetlands, or ESA areas. The ESA to the south is over 150 meters from the proposal. Within the proposed remainder, there had previously been an aggregate extraction operation. However, in 2017, the county confirmed that the pit was no longer operating and the lands have remained zoned agricultural. The landowners do operate a business called Stony Soil Products Limited, which processes and packages compost and peat moss for sale. This operation obtained development permit approvals in 2012 and again in 2020. The proposal is located over 560 meters from where the business operates. This slide reviews soil information. According to Canada Land Inventory, the majority of the quarter, including the proposal, contains Class 5 soils. According to AgriSid, most of the quarter contains soils with severe limitations to produce spring grains. And according to the farmland field sheet, most of the quarter contains soils with a farmland assessment rating of 39%. However, the proposal is within a treated area with soils that have the greatest limitations, having a farmland assessment rating of 8.5%. The next slide shows a site dimension sketch showing the proposed parcel along the quarter south boundary and immediately east of a parcel that was subdivided in 1991. You can see that the east boundary roughly follows a tree line and most of the proposal contains forest. This slide looks, page 134 looks at images that were taken during the site visit. Both photos were taken just south of the proposal. Image A is looking to the northeast, while image B is looking to the northwest towards the existing subdivision. You can see how the proposal is situated immediately adjacent to the previous subdivision and gently slopes to the east. This next slide looks at additional images of the proposal. Photo A was taken east of the proposal and photo B was taken near the proposal's southeast corner. You can see how the proposed east boundary generally follows a tree line and excludes any of the lands that have been used for agriculture. This slide looks at the residential development within the proposed remainder. This area consists of one dwelling from 2011 and a second dwelling that is nearly completed being constructed. There's also an older dwelling that has been converted to a storage building, a few sheds, a few animal shelters, 5 RVs or travel trailers, and 4 commercial trailers. Planning did reach out to the applicants to confirm the number and use of the RVs and trailers within the residential area. The applicant outlined that family members are in the process of moving into the newly constructed dwelling and that the commercial trailers have been used as temporary storage during this moving process. None of the RVs are being used as temporary living accommodations. They noted that they intend on removing one of the 5 RVs and the commercial trailers as soon as the moving process is complete over the summer. The correspondence between planning and the applicants has been included in an attachment in the report to council. This slide shows some of the development that is part of the business operations north of the dwelling site. The most recent development permit for the business was issued in 2020. The business consists of a frame and fabric building and 2 mobile trailers used as an office and lunch area for workers. This slide looks at views of the proposed remainder from the Township Road. Photo A was taken near the proposal southeast corner, while photo B was taken south of the development within the proposed remainder. And you can see stony soil operations in the background, which are well removed from the proposal. This next slide shows access and sightlines. The left side shows sightlines along Township Road 312 and the location of a potential future access into the proposal. The right side shows access into the residential site within the proposed remainder from Range Road 50. Access and sightlines appear to be of no concern. The proposal is seeking to create the second subdivision from the quarter as a residential parcel and was evaluated under the residential land use policies of the municipal development plan. The application is proposing to create the third title for the quarter, which can be considered within the potential multi-lot residential development area where a maximum of 4 titles per quarter can be considered. Policy 4.3.3 provides the criteria to consider the proposed residential lot. The landowners have held title to the subject lands for over 5 years, and the proposal is located along the periphery of the quarter in an area that contains least productive soils. A new access can be constructed into the proposal as a condition of subdivision. Should the application be approved, a new dwelling constructed within the proposal area, the total number of dwellings would be within the maximum number allowed within the quarter, being 4 units. As the proposal is seeking to create a new parcel beyond the first parcel out, it will be subject to municipal reserve as a condition of subdivision, which would be calculated as the value of 10% of the land being subdivided. MDP policies do outline that the preferred parcel size for a new residential parcel should be 2 to 3 acres. However, a maximum of 5 acres can be considered. Also, a maximum of 9 acres within a quarter may be used for residential zoning. However, larger areas may be considered where setbacks, topography, and easements prevent the creation of a reasonable building envelope. The subject quarter previously had a 6-acre subdivision that was approved in 1992 under previous policies, and the proposal seeking to create an additional 4-acre residential subdivision. Although the proposal is slightly larger than the preferred parcel size, and the total area being proposed for residential use within the quarter would be approximately 10 acres, the applicant has stated that the larger size is necessary to ensure the proposal has sufficient space for a suitable building envelope, given the slope topography. The proposal is located in an area that has not been used with surrounding agricultural operations, and soil data indicates that the proposal contains the least productive soils. Administration can support a resolution of approval for this proposal. The proposals within the parameters described in the municipal development plan and land use bylaw. And during the circulation process, there were no letters of concern that were received from adjacent landowners or referral agencies. That concludes my presentation, and the applicant is available if you have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Does the applicant have any new or additional information they want to? No, the applicant waives. Is there anyone in the gallery who would like to speak either in favor or in opposition to this application? No. Is there anyone online who would like to either speak in favor or in opposition to this application? So I believe we have some.
I would like to speak in opposition.
Okay, if you could please state and spell your name for the record.
My name is Sarah Martineau, Martineau.
Okay, you have 5 minutes to address council.
The proposed subdivision there is it's right next to obviously the one beside it, but it's across from 3 other acreages, which would bring, so there would be 5 residential acreages in one corner, with the road separating it. So I think it's about a third of a kilometer stretch of road. There'd be 5 residences there. And I feel like that would kind of devalue the surrounding properties, having that many residences that close together in a rural area, because typically people don't purchase, I don't think people purchase rural properties to be that clustered together in such a small area. So that's my main concern, is high concentration of properties in such a small place would devalue the other properties. And that's my only concern.
Okay, thank you very much. If you can just remain on the line, council may have questions for you.
Sure.
Thank you. Is there anyone else online who would like to speak either in favor or in opposition to this application? No, we see none. So I will open the floor to council for questions.
Okay.
Okay. Councillor Harris.
Just a general question for planning. So when we have an applicant, in this case, who said, we're going to remove all the trailers and living or non-living units, but RVs, do we follow up on that?
So through the chair, so we are aware of the second home. There was a permit issued for that. It is something that we make sure through the conditions that the RV living is done at the time of completion of the home. We don't always completely follow up through the process that they're gone, but through an additional application process like this, it would force us to go through and ask the questions to make sure everything is as per the development permit issued.
Okay, thank you.
Is there any other questions? Councillor Johnson.
Thank you. So just a question in regard to the concern that's been expressed. If we look at page 125, I can see that there are 3 homes on the other side of the road, but the land use doesn't indicate that these are separate acreages. So on page 126, you can see an aerial photograph that that shows that development somewhat. But I'm wondering if the residences across the road are on separate titles, or they appear to, other than the 1 acreage, the second and third dwellings appear to be part of 1 parcel. So that's my question.
Thank you. Through the chair, there does appear to be 1 residence within its own acreage that is a residential parcel. And then it shows that there are 2 other units within the remainder of that quarter to the south.
Thank you.
Hey, is there any other questions? So I just have a general question. So if we go to page 141. So clearly in section D, 4.3.3, it says that the residential subdivision shall not exceed 9 acres. And so I'm just wondering why administration would propose approval for this when it is not in line with policy.
The policy does also include that final statement that does say larger areas may be considered where setback topography and easement prevents the creation of reasonable building envelopes. And given that the applicant provided additional information that might be necessary to accommodate this subdivision, given the topography, it is a subdivision that can be considered.
So I thought a shall not statement was a shall not. So maybe I'm just misinterpreting this. I think council always has the purview and the authority to amend or change our policies based on what's been presented to us. But I'm a bit concerned that we're being proposed something here that doesn't align with policy from administration. Margareta?
So through the chair, as it's written there in the municipal development plan, subsection D does have the shall statement for the 9 acres, but then there is an additional part of subsection D that says that larger areas may be considered. It was based on the application, on the applicant's request to have that parcel with the size that does ultimately create that 10 acres from the quarter section. So it is up to council's discretion if you were to approve the application as submitted or to deny it.
Okay, thank you. Is there any additional questions from council? Councillor Harris.
Yeah, just to follow up on that question. Did we ground truth to show that there was an issue with topography or something? I'm looking at all the photographs and other than trees, I don't see anything that limits a building envelope because of topography.
So through the chair, typical process would be absolutely a site visit is conducted to make sure that it would align in the applicant's request. But the applicant is here, perhaps the question would be better asked to the applicant.
Councillor Harris, do you want to ask your question to the applicant, or is that sufficient information?
No, certainly. If the applicant wants to come forward, I'll.
Thank you. If I could ask the applicant to just state and spell their name or for the record. I know we already have it, but stickler for policy or for process.
Gerard Kulchar, Gerard, last name Kulcsar.
So Mr. Kulchar, you heard my question. I'll ask it again. What are the topographical restraints that you need a bigger parcel than the 3 that are allowed?
The acreage that's directly to the west of the proposed subdivision is up on the top of the hill. And there is a significant slope there that starts coming down the hill. And where the acreage is to get proper, what we thought egress and a proper building site when we walk through it. There is quite a slope in through there, so. That was, I mean, you can, it may not show it from the photos, but there is quite a hill there. Let's see.
So you're saying that the topography requires it to be located farther back?
No, sorry, farther to the east of the existing acreage. It's where the hillside is, and then going farther back to the north, like if we were to cut it back on the north boundary and make it wider, then it starts getting into the farmland where we're working. We wanted to leave a tree buffer there for seclusion and for privacy of whoever builds in there. But that would have opened it all up. Coming any farther down and made it extremely narrow because of where you have to put the driveway.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other questions for the applicant while the applicant is up? No, seeing none. Thank you very much. Is there any other questions from council? Seeing none, then I will ask if planning has any closing comments.
No, I do not. Thank you.
Thank you. And does the applicant have any closing comments? No, the applicant waives. So with that, I will close the public hearing and I will look for a motion. Councillor Fulton.
I'll move that council give second reading to bylaw 10/25, redesignating the lands within southeast 1331-5 west of the 5th.
Thank you very much. Any discussion? Councillor Harris.
Yeah, I'm not going to support this motion. I think from the explanation from the applicant, I see no reason why it can't conform to the 3 acres to keep it under 9. It appears to me that the topography isn't the issue. It's more just giving more land. And I think it can be reduced on the north without moving the east boundary into the farmable land. So yeah.
Thank you. Any further discussion? No. Yeah, so I'm not going to support this either. I think that the 9 acres is a shall statement. And although we do give ourselves flexibility, I think that it has to be within reason and why the policy was written, which is to align with topography. And I'm not convinced that this one does either. So with that, I will call to question. All in favor? And opposed? And that motion is carried. Councillor Fulton.
I'll move that council give third reading to bylaw LU 10/25, redesignating the lands within southeast 1331-5 west of the 5th.
Thank you. Any further discussion? I'll call to question. All in favor? And opposed? And that motion is carried. Okay, so we will move on to 7. We'll do the directives first. 7.1, directives. Jeff, please.
Thank you, Reeve. The directives start on page 180.
Oh, wait a minute. Sorry, Jeff. Oh, yes, no, sorry, I was messed up. Yes,
Yeah.
7.1, please
Okay.
carry on.
Yep, RFD is on page 179 and the directives are on page 180 and 181. So I can answer any questions on page 180. If council has any questions.
Council, is there any questions on page 180? No, seeing none, Jeff? Is there anything you want to highlight on page 180?
Nothing to highlight. The rail safety improvement program, there's still been no communications on that. So we're still on hold with that project. Item RC 23-659, the lobbying efforts on behalf of Greenwood Neighborhood Place is also on hold, pending additional information. So those 2 items, we're just waiting for more direction.
Okay, thank you. And I'll get to that in some councillor reports.
Okay. And on page 181, you'll see several of the planning and development items there at the top. They're the The four items are connected, and we are anticipating bringing that agenda item back to council on March 26th.
Thank you. Is there any questions for Jeff on any of those? If not, we have a motion on page 178. 179. Counselor Miller.
I'd move the council receive the council directives as information with appropriate action to be taken.
Thank you very much. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? And that motion's carried. Why don't we take a 10-minute break till 10 past 10? All right, so we will resume the regular council meeting of March 12th. And we'll move on to 8.1, RCMP quarterly reports. Christopher, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Page 182 of your agenda package, two components to this RFD. The first of which is that we have received the RCMP quarterly reports from each of the three detachments, and they are attached to the agenda package for your review. I would note that we have invited the detachment commanders to a meeting in May, so they may have an opportunity to provide further information on those reports to you there or answer any questions you might have. And then the second component of the RFD is the opportunity for council to set your annual policing priorities that we distribute to the RCMP detachments, and then they combine into their overall direction that they have received from K Division. We have provided on the RFD on page 182 the policing priorities over the past few years as well for council's consideration, but certainly you may wish to set the policing priorities as whatever council sets for the upcoming operational season for the RCMP. So with that, I'll pause and certainly can provide any information on those policing priorities, or if council has any indication as to which ones they wish to change for 2025, 2026, we can certainly provide that direction to the detachments.
Okay, so maybe we'll start with the priorities. Is there anyone who would like to discuss or change the policing priorities? Councillor Johnson.
Given the work that we've been doing with Sundry Wellness and with Ag Services Board, where we've been talking about AGNO, I'm wondering if we want to move the mental health priority up, or whether we want to leave it where it is.
So I think it does say in no particular order, so we haven't actually put a priority, so we just give our 4 and then that's how it works. So it doesn't matter what order they're in. I think they're all essentially considered to have the same priority. Is that correct, Christopher?
That's correct, Your Worship.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yep. Councillor Harris.
Just looking through the stats provided, I don't see anything in the statistics that would like show a red flag or something that should be given more attention than anything other. I think the 4 that are there continue to serve us well.
Councillor Lutz.
I'm just wondering if there's any input from our bylaw or our folks on what they see on the ground as any gaps or opportunities.
Not that it has been highlighted for me, Councillor. Most of our operations with the RCMP from our CPOs are with the joint force operations in the event that there are any traffic enforcement or any other larger projects where they need some assistance on. But as far as the other priorities, they hadn't been highlighted for me that there is a need to increase one over the other.
Thank you. And Christopher, I've never asked this before, but I'm assuming that all of the urban centers also have their list of priorities for the RCMP and the police forces. Do we get a copy of those?
So we don't get a copy of all of the priorities that each of the municipalities, urban or rural, provide to the detachments. We just end up getting a letter from the RCMP detachment that says we've taken into consideration all of the feedback from all of the municipalities, and here are the policing priorities for the detachment that we have set for the upcoming season. So you can kind of read between the lines on some of those. You know, if you see that, there's an urban type priority, you would assume those come from the urban municipalities. But they don't say, oh, the town of Tisbury said this, town of Carcer said this, town of Oakville said this.
Okay. And so I'm wondering if once we set our priorities, I mean, communication and collaboration is key, really. And we had that great, meeting with all of our urban partners and the RCMP. Just wondering if it would be worthwhile, once we set the priorities, if we shouldn't just send a quick letter to our urban partners and say, just for your information, these are the highlighted policing priorities from the rural perspective, and maybe we'll get some engagement on that. And I always think it's good to share these sort of things with our urban partners.
Yep, we can certainly do that if council wishes.
Okay. So if there's, is there any discussion on, so no further discussion on well, let's go through the quarterly reports. Maybe when we go through those, then we may want to revisit these. Is there any questions on the quarterly reports? Councillor Miller.
Not a question, just a comment. Looking through the staffing situations on all 4 of them, it looks like they're fairly well up to staff. The vacancies look like they're pretty well filled. You see maybe one opening, but it's good to see that they're finally up to par.
Okay. So we have two motions. Oh, Councillor Johnson.
Just one request, if I might, before we move to the motions. I was recently contacted by one of our ratepayers who asked if we would ask the RCMP for more presence at the intersection of Range Road 44 on Highway 27. There has been some tragedy at that intersection in the past. Then the road on Highway 27 was widened. However, given the speed on the highway, which is often 110 rather than 100, and the amount of left turning traffic at that intersection, some folks in our neighborhood are actually choosing to use a different road because making a left-hand turn at that intersection is very dangerous. So they've just asked if we could ask for more RCMP or sheriff presence at that intersection, if we might. So that's the Westward Ho corner turnoff. Certainly, I'm also anticipating as we look into summer and have the summer traffic coming through the construction in Sundre, that maybe once people get on the highway, I think that the sort of human idea is that, well, now we're finally out of sitting in traffic, maybe we'll go a little faster. And so I am very concerned about that.
So just going back, Jeff, just looking at, or Jeff or Christopher, just kind of the way that we normally try and do things is if council has been alerted to a problem area for speeding or for inappropriate driving, they can come to administration and bring those concerns forward. And then we do try and put more of a presence or more of an emphasis on those areas if we have the resources available. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. And in this case, if it's a provincial highway, we would also share that with the appropriate RCMP detachment. Certainly, when we get those feedback, it's helpful if there's a specific time of day or specific time period where the traffic infractions are noted so that we can do more targeted enforcement, it's helpful. An example is at a certain time of day, we see the same vehicle blowing through stop signs. It seems to be a pattern coming or going from work or wherever they're going to. We can pass that on to our peace officers and then, they can spend their time more appropriately. But certainly this location would be a very high traffic intersection and we'll share those concerns with our RCMP members as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, is there any further questions on the RCMP reports, on the quarterly reports? No, then we have two motions. Two recommended motions or alternative motions on page 182. Councillor Harris.
I'll move the council receive the RCMP quarterly reports as information.
Thank you. Any further discussion? I'll call the question. All in favor? And that motion is carried. And Councillor Harris.
I'll move the council continue its policing priorities for 2025-26 in no particular order as follows. As per the agenda, or do you want me to read them out?
Yeah, read them out.
Connecting with the rural community, including a focus on joint forces operations, reducing rural property crime, rural drug enforcement, and mental health and domestic violence.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion on those? Seeing none, I will call the question. All in favor? And that motion's carried. And is there anyone opposed to sending a letter to our urban partners with our priorities as we've just approved them? No? Okay, then we will organize to do that. And maybe just one more thing while we've got the RCMP agenda up. Councillor Johnson had a great idea after our RCMP engagement a couple of weeks ago to ask, I believe it was Mr. Wayne Nickel to see whether or not we could get some more support for long weekends, in the May long weekend in particular, from the district advisory NCO. Maybe Councillor Johnson, I'll let you address this a little, and then we can ask council for direction.
Thank you. And I don't have my note in front of me, but yes, when we had the presentation from the RCMP 2 weeks ago, I did ask the attending folks, including Mr. Wayne. He had mentioned that in Cochrane, there is our special folks there who are available to help the regular detachments when extra staff are required. And so my question was whether or not, given the huge influx of campers that we have to the West Country, if we could request extra help for the long weekends through the summer. So his recommendation was that we would ask them fairly soon so that they could sort of gear up for our request, that we would ask for extra help for all the long weekends, starting in May long for the West Country. My concern is that it is kind of the Wild West out there when you have about 20,000 extra people on the landscape, and some people need to be reminded that it's even though it's a playground, they still need to live with the rules.
Okay, so I did have an opportunity to speak to both Reeve Michelle Swanson and the acting mayor of Rocky Mountain House, as well as Mayor Warnock from the town of Sundre, just asking whether or not they would be interested in sending a joint request. I think they would be. They're just looking for us to send some information along. So if it is acceptable to council, then we'll try and put that together, organize that, send it to our partners and ask them for support, and then we can go back to the RCMP and make that request. Yeah. Okay, then we will work on that. Thank you very much, Councillor Johnson. I think that's going to be a real help to the detachments, because speaking obviously to the elected officials, they're very concerned that a lot of the resources have to be moved to the western locations and kind of move away from the town. So, Councillor Harris.
Yeah, just for information, to be aware that you'll require a couple of letters because the Southern District does not include a lot of Clearwater County. So it'll be involved sending one to the Southern Alberta District Commander, one to the Central District Commander. So it covers off both.
Perfect. Then, Councillor Harris, you can help me with that. Jeff, would you like a motion for that?
I think it would be beneficial, then we can have it on our directives and make sure it gets tracked appropriately.
Okay.
I believe, Reeve, the motion would be something to the effect that Mountain View County lead discussions with the town of Sundre and Clearwater County to request additional RCMP support on long weekends. And that would include, all the other engagements that we'll do along the way, including the detachment commanders and getting their input into it.
Okay. So Laura, maybe you can put that up, and can we include Sundre, Clearwater County and Rocky Mountain House? That was a suggestion from the Reeve of Clearwater County that we include Rocky in that.
Did we want to include the town of Sundre as well?
Yes, yeah, we've got the
Okay,
town of Sundre
okay.
in the motion too.
Thank you.
Thanks, Laura. That's fine. Put it up and we'll does that capture the Greg?
Just to be more specific, I would take out help and put officers.
Extra resources like that.
Well, then resources, what it could mean an analyst sitting in a desk somewhere.
Okay.
So I think extra officers on the ground Just so they know specifically what we're looking for is warm bodies, not administrative type assistance.
Okay, so the motion reads that council direct administration to request the RCMP for extra officers on ground for all long weekends starting May long for the West Country in conjunction with the town of Sundre, Rocky Mountain House in Clearwater County.
Yes, and
Okay.
I would move that.
Moved by Councillor Johnson.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor? And that motion's carried. Okay, so we are on to 9.1, Cremona District Recreation and Culture Board Reserve Allocation 2025. Christopher, please.
Thanks, Your Worship. So we're on page 217 of the agenda package, and I'll pass it over to Josie to run you through the RFT.
Good morning. The Cremona District Recreation and Culture Board received a special application to access the reserve funding that we carry over each year. This reserve balance is kept for situations just like this. Last year in the reserve at the end of 2024, there was $157,000 in it. The request came from Cremona Ag Society. They're looking into replacing their ice plant chiller. They've recently applied for the CFEP small stream grant, and in order to get that, it is a matching grant. So they had to have confirmation of funding in other sources, so we were part of that. They started the application early just because of the lead time of the project. The board made a decision on February 21st to allocate $60,000 out of the reserve fund for the arena's chiller.
Thank you. Any questions? Councillor Fulton.
Do we have any idea of the cost, the total cost of the replacement and a timeline on when it might get accomplished?
I know they were planning to do it over the summer. Total expenditures is around $251,000.
Just as a side note, I noticed that the Ag Society is doing some fundraising towards this already advertised, so.
Thank you. And is this the same issue that Didsbury is facing right now? This is the same? Yeah. Okay, $251,000. That's a pretty hefty price tag. Councillor Miller.
So after Didsbury's issue, I think most of our adjacent towns are now looking at their infrastructure, and this is a very big one that they're looking at. So I think we'll probably see more and more of this come forward in the next year or so.
Yeah. All right, if there's no further discussion, then we have a motion on page 217. Councillor Harris, your light's on. Oh, I thought you may have wanted to make the motion. Councillor Fulton.
I'll make the motion. I'll move that council receive as information the Cremona District Recreation and Culture Board's approval of $60,000 from the Cremona District Recreational and Cultural Reserve to fund the Cremona Ag Society's ice plant chiller.
Thank you. Any further discussion? I'll call to question. All in favor? And that motion's carried. 9.2, 2025 dust suppression RFP results. Jeff, please.
Thank you, Reeve. So on page 223 is the start of this RFD, and you will see that we have tendered out our annual dust suppression program, also known as calcium chloride, which is the product we use in the program. And the tender results came in at 0.05 cents higher. So last year we were at 19 cents. This year we are at 19.5 cents for the tender results, which does indicate that there will be a slight increase to residents that participate in our 200-meter dust suppression program. In 2024, that cost would have been $608 for that 200-meter stretch. And in 2025, the cost for that 200-meter stretch will be $624. And if there are any other questions, I can try and answer them.
Thank you. Council, any questions on this one? No? Okay, so we have a motion on page 223. Councillor Nixon.
I move that council receive the results for the 2025 dust suppression request for proposal as information with no further action to be taken.
Thank you very much. Any further discussion? I will call to question. All in favor? And that motion's carried. And permanent closure for road plan 3413Q. Jeff, please.
Thank you, Reeve. So this item is related to our bridge file project 73751, which is a 2025 bridge replacement over the on the Carstairs Blind Line Road. So in pursuing this project, we've identified a series of road allowances that are no longer used. You'll see that picture on page 228. So these are surveyed road allowances, which can go through the simplified process for road closure. The process would be council passes a motion, we seek Alberta Transportation approval, and then we would proceed to close these and consolidate them with the adjacent parcels of land as part of this bridge replacement project. With that, I guess if there's any questions, I'll try and answer them.
Thank you. Any questions for Jeff? Councillor Miller.
So just one, Jeff, when this happens, this is us going forward, initiating the process, not the landowner coming forward?
Yeah, so when it's related to a county project, such as this with our bridge replacement, we do try and clean up our road plans as part of the project. If we weren't doing the bridge or road project, obviously we don't pursue them actively. And we rely on residents to make the request to instigate the process when it's not related to one of our infrastructure projects.
Good, thank you.
Councillor Harris.
Jeff, just curious why we wouldn't take the road plan on the south side of 303.
I think there's a access requirement to some land there, and there may be a driveway on it, I think, if I see that in the aerial photo. But I can certainly look into that further with staff if there's, if the question is lingering still.
Well, yeah, I see the driveway or road there, doesn't look like one of our roads, but I'm just wondering why we wouldn't clean it up all at one time.
I assume it has been looked at and deemed that it's still necessary for some access reason, but I will ask staff to provide more detail and I'll circulate that to council for information.
Thanks.
Councillor Lutz.
And do we notify landowner or what kind of information what if they were to object? What happens then?
So we notify all the landowners, and in this case, there has been no objections. If there was an objection, certainly we would need to either resolve the objection or, perhaps deem that it doesn't fit the simplified process and go through a public hearing and a bylaw and, some more formal processes. But in this case, the adjacent landowners have been circulated and there is no objections. Staff have messaged me and confirmed that it is an access reason that we have determined the south side should not be closed.
Is there any downside to, would there be any downside for landowners to close this and reconsolidate it with the properties?
Typically, no. Perhaps if there was some remaining road infrastructure or something on the property, there may be some environmental liability concerns, but typically we don't see that. Typically, the landowners want us to clean this up and consolidate it. And council probably will remember on the Acme Road, we had several of those that we went through. And I think in those cases, the landowners were also helping drive that process.
Perfect. Thank you. Any other questions? If not, we have a motion on page 225. Councillor Miller.
I would move the council direct its chief administrative officer to seek approval from the Minister of Transportation to permanently close a portion of road plan 3413Q in accordance with section 22 road closure resolution of the Municipal Government Act, and to consolidate the portion within southwest of 2233 west of the 5 and northwest 1533 west of the 5 into the adjacent land.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call to question. All in favor? And that motion's carried. 9.4 Health and Safety Days. Jeff, please.
Thank you, Reeve. On page 241 is the RFD for our annual Health and Safety Day that we put on for staff. In keeping with what we've done in past years, we are seeking council approval to close the administration office from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. so that all staff can attend and participate in the Health and Safety Day. Should council not approve the closure, then we have a contingency plan in place where we will rotate staff and ensure that we're providing services here at the office while we conduct our Health and Safety Day in Didsbury. And if there's any questions, I'd be happy to try and answer them.
Thank you. Any questions for Jeff? No, then I'll look for a motion, please. Councillor Nixon.
The council authorized administration to close the office on May 30th, 2025 from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. to allow all Mountain View County staff to attend the annual Health and Safety Days.
Thank you. I think this is an excellent idea. I always highly support this. I think it's so important for all staff to be able to attend at the same time. The cross learnings from staff and the engagements between the staff is really important on that day. I've been very privileged and honored to attend it a few times. I've missed a couple, but it's always a great day. And it's always great to see the staff interact. So I'm really pleased to support this one for sure. There's no further discussion. I will call to question. All in favor? And that motion's carried. Holy cow, we are just blasting through this agenda. So we're on councillor reports. I will start with Councillor Fulton.
Okay, so going back, February 27th, we had a Carstairs ICC meeting. And we'll discuss those notes in the closed session. And then also that day, there was a Parkland Library Board. Not a lot of new information there, a lot of review of 2024 statistics and stuff like that. Looking forward to the audit in May and just moving forward with that. March 5th in Carstairs, we had an Aggie Days meeting. Planning is going well. I don't think there's going to be too many loose ends, and we will be getting the invite for all council to attend that. That is May, I don't want to speak out of turn, 23rd, 24th, Friday, Saturday. And then March 7th, I had the honor to attend the Mountain View Neighbors, Mountain View County and Neighbors Women in Business Awards Luncheon. It was great to see all the local people there, and congratulations to Stacy Stilling, the CEO of Mountain View Seniors Housing for getting the Woman of Influence, and for Reeve Angela Albers for being nominated in the same category, and Tizia Heiser from Ag Service Board for winning the Woman in Agriculture. So that is all.
Thank you. Councillor Nixon.
So since the last council meeting, we did have that meeting with the RCMP and the Mountain View Senior Housing. I think that went really well with the councillors from other towns and counties. So I think that was wonderful that we could all get together and do that. We've had MPC meetings. We also had our very first Bergen area structure plan meeting. I think that went really, really well. So I look forward to being with that group and going through the process for the reviewing the Bergen ASP. And then of course, council today.
Thank you. Councillor Johnson.
Thank you. I did think that the RCMP and Mountain View Seniors Housing meeting that we had with our partner councils was excellent and informative. The Friday of that week, I did an online meeting with the Red Deer River Watershed Alliance for a governance meeting. Given the concerns about water, there are increased municipalities interested in sitting as directors on the Watershed Alliance. And so we had good discussion in that regard. I've attended Sundre Hospital Futures meeting. They continue to do very good work. Last Wednesday, I was in Bentley for the Red Deer River Watershed Alliance Spring Forum. Some of the presenters there were from the groundwater study at the University of Calgary. There was also a presentation about the water use for fracking, where the water is being taken out of the Blind Man River and the Medicine River. Given the work that the watershed is doing on the state of the watershed report, they showed that there was more water taken out of those two rivers for fracking in 2024 than the town of Bentley would have used more for 30 years. So certainly there is, I think, growing concern about the amount of water used for fracking. And in our community, 2 wells were fracked in the last 2 weeks with the water coming directly out of the Red Deer River. Also attended the Municipal Planning Commission meeting, Women in Business, and congratulations to our Reeve in her ward as a woman of influence. Thank you, Angela, for all the good work you do. And yesterday attended the Sundre Hospital Wellness Committee, and you may have more to say about that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Miller.
So I guess starting off after last meeting, council meeting, I attended the question and answer period with the RCMP, Mountain View Seniors Housing. It was great to see the turnout from the adjacent towns. I think we had full slate, just about every councillor was here. It was really great. Then ICC meeting on the Thursday with Carstairs. Following that, last Tuesday evening, I made my way out to Linden or to Torrington, and Elta Link had a community engagement session there for all the landowners and affected people within that area out there, 791. And this is in regards to potentially connecting the solar project out of Torrington into the main line out at 791. So they gave three different options: line 1, line 2, and line 3. The 2 southern lines would be what they call monopoles, 1 single pole with 3 wires hanging off the top. The downfall of that is there needs to be more poles per quarter to cover the distance, whereas the old traditional H style is the northern route. Less poles, they can go further distance. So it was a good opportunity for the landowners to look at and see the different potential paths where it may or may not go, and to interact with EltaLink. EltaLink had, in my estimation, about 14 staff members there. They covered off everything from the electromagnetism to the wetlands to birds, pretty well everything that would have come up by a landowner. They were there. It also was the following night, Wednesday night, but I was not able to attend. And it was good to see. We had, in my estimation, probably 80% of the people there were from our county, a lot from Jennifer's area and from mine. So it was very good to see. I talked with some landowners that were there the following night, and they were very impressed with EltaLink's total package. And they were adjacent landowners to the project, so that was good to see. Following that, I attended Reynolds Mirth Emerging Trends on the Friday in Calgary. I think we came away with a few good things that are coming forward. It was good to see we had Jeff and Christopher were able to attend, and I'm always appreciative of them having the time to come to these things. Following that, I met with residents, specifically over some EltaLink deals, and that's about it. Thank you.
Thank you.
So yeah, I was a bit worried when MAP folded that we wouldn't get together, but I think that process of meeting when we need to meet was really much more effective than what we were doing with MAP. So good job to staff for organizing that. It was very, very, very well done. I attended a CLC meeting, so the Community Learning Campus, and it was just really refreshing to hear the history and what a jewel that is to our county. So the CLC has a e-learning component, the Fine Arts Center, the Ralph Klein Center, the outdoor fields, Learning Commons and the Carpentry Lab are the components of the CLC. And they have 2,137 memberships. And out of that, 834 are community and 321 are seniors. So over half of the CLC memberships is community, not high school or college. So I thought that was really interesting on how much the community uses that. 264 daily fitness attendees, and they had some really neat panels of user groups that use the CLC and just how much it means to and it's not just olds. It is Special Olympics is out of there, and there's lots of groups that use that, and they went through just how busy that place is, especially in the summer with all the provincial camps. And I do use that gym, and it's really happening place. And then the biggest win out of that is just what a center of connection it is and how it brings high school students with community members. And it was just a really, really good reminder of how special that is in the province and the work that the Mountain View County did to make that happen. So the county was really highlighted as a partner in that. So I was quite proud of the county on the work that I didn't do before I was a counselor. So good job to the people that saw that vision. I attended the AltaLink open house on the next following Wednesday night, and a lot of Knee Hill people were there, and the Knee Hill Council was there, and you did a really good job summarizing it, but I learned a lot on how they mitigate environmental issues and wildlife, so that was good. MPC meeting, and then the Women's Business Awards, which that was a packed house, and just because this hasn't been mentioned, the organizers that put that together, and I saw so many Mountain View people doing tech, doing all the jobs. So I think that we should be really proud of our staff for making that event, and the volunteer organizers. Deb, I think, did an amazing job. There's an Olds Library strategic planning session on April 8th, and I'll send the invite out. I know it's hard to go to every meeting. I plan on attending, but I was just thinking about what everybody else knows of their libraries and what they're doing. I think it's good that they're doing it, but any outside counselor that has time to come and that could offer on maybe what they're seeing in their areas would be beneficial. And then yesterday I attended on behalf of my farm. I was invited to the Macdonald Laurier Institute, and it was a roundtable on unleashing Canadian egg potential. And the only reason I bring this up is I don't want to be a disruptor, but in the room with heavy hitters in the egg industry. And the key messages is regulation's worse than tax. Government is generally anti-business. And that egg policy is so outdated. We're dealing with policies in the 50s and 60s. So I didn't expect to hear the disdain for government regulation, and municipalities was not left off the plate. So they gave me some really good examples on how egg has been stymied due to municipal policies. So just mention that because I think we get comfortable here and thinking everything's great and grand, but when you talk to business people that are trying to get a label on a potato chip bag or trying to export, and depending on transportation, it just kind of took me back on the problems that our industry faces. So it was a neat opportunity to attend that on behalf of our farm.
And Councillor Lutz, if you have examples that you can provide Council and Jeff with where you think maybe our municipal policies are not living up to the expectations or in support of ag, I'd love to hear those. We did go through a process, where it was the same with economic development. Well, our policies and such are hampering. And it's difficult to go through your policies to determine where you're not supporting businesses and where you're not supporting agriculture. So any suggestions you have from that would be very welcome.
Well, in my comfortable place, I said, well, you don't mean municipalities. And I just got lambasted, and it's like, we'll tell you 1,000 different ways how it happened. So I hope to get more follow-up, and I did get a handful sightings. So yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and if you can go back to those contacts and ask those contacts to send us some examples directly, well, I think all of us would be very welcome to hear any of the potential improvements we can make as a municipality. Thank you for that.
A follow-up question, if I might. Is there a chance, Jennifer, that we could invite one or two of those heavy hitters to present to Ag Service Board? Because I think that through our Ag Service Board, we have a real opportunity to increase our awareness and to lobby and move some of these things forward. So I too would welcome that.
Or even to work with our administration to see whether or not those that have strong suggestions for changes to municipal politics or municipal policies would be willing to come and present to us. I think that may be something worthwhile as well. So if you can work with Jeff on that to see whether or not there is someone who would like to come and, or maybe multiple people who would like to come as a delegation and help us improve our policies where possible, I think that's always something that we look for that kind of input.
Yeah, and just to build on that, maybe it's something that we can include RMA, because they're definitely bigger picture. So if they were to work with us, I think that they would want to see what we could do with it broader.
But sometimes we tend to get them too big first. So if we can actually focus down and find out from our municipality which ones we could support, because sometimes, again, people will bring forward policy ideas that maybe aren't attainable or maybe aren't something realistic that we could deal with. But anyways, I'll let you work with Jeff. That'd be great. Councillor Harris.
Well, we all attended the RCMP and the MVSH. My only two comments there is I thought the RCMP presentation, I think people left still having questions, which they can still contact them and get answers, but it's always good when they can ask those questions in the group and everybody benefits from the information. MVSH, I think, was a great presentation. I'm prejudiced because I sit on the board, but the other issue is that for years, we've had this lingering doubt or question about MVSH. And I'm hoping with all the people that were present, that that's going to put an end to the constant murmuring and questioning about the direction of MVSH. It's obviously a very positive message that they delivered, and they're moving in a good direction. And hopefully we've heard the last of the nattering and worry about past things that happened. Carstairs ICC attended the Cremona Community Engagement Site. For those that don't know, the engagement site is a group that puts on educational opportunities for people more focused on seniors than others. Attended the Cremona Library Board, attended the Water Valley Stampede Association Rodeo Committee. Plans are it's in early June 7th, 8th for the rodeo this year. And it's coming along very well. They're adding an event for women in cow riding. And they're working with the Ventures, moving that along to see the Ventures in place this year. Attended a Bear Smart board meeting. Bear Smart is loading up. There's less than half of the weekends available for presentations. So there's lots of groups and areas coming forward requesting Bear Smart presentations. Attended the Cremona FCSS meeting. Attended the Aggie Days meeting with Councillor Fulton. International Women's Day, I thought that was a great event. I just want to shout out to Deborah Rice Solomons, who is just a force in nature when it comes to organizing these kinds of things. And she is just such a generous person in our community. Attended the first Bergen ASP meeting and attended the Water Valley Community Association Board. They are expanding their Celtic Festival into a multi-genre music, 2-day music festival this year. And preparations for that, I was really pleased to hear that they've got a couple of Juno Award winners and a Juno nominee that are going to be presenting it, or singing and performing, sorry, is the word I was looking for. It's coming along really well. It's going to be a very, very significant event. And that's it.
Excellent, thank you. Well, I'm going to start with the meeting with the RCMP and Mount View Senior Housing. I had incredible feedback from all the elected officials. I attended the leadership, the President Summit and Leadership Caucus in Edmonton, and had amazing feedback from all of our towns on how good that event was. And so they said, we need to do this more frequently. And I said, that's perfect. You give us some suggestions on ideas of who we could invite, and we will organize another one. So I think it was really well attended. I'm going to probably talk a little bit more negatively than Councillor Harris on the Mountain View Senior Housing, just because I absolutely have to. I just want to make everyone aware that this requisition increase of 6% year on year that we were presented is essentially a $200,000 increase in requisitions every year for Mountain View Senior Housing. The impact to Mountain View County alone is $120,000 to $150,000 a year. So just to put it in perspective, our council has always tried to keep the increase in taxes to 1 to 1.5%, which means the county is only ever increasing our taxes kind of between $300,000 and $450,000 a year. So on $3 million requisition, $3.3 million requisition, they're getting very close to what we actually increase our taxes. And I know that this isn't the current board and this isn't the current CAO, and you have been dealt a hand. I get it, and you've done amazingly great with what's been going on. But I think we still have to realize that if we were to increase our taxes 6% year on year, our municipal taxes, we would be increasing our taxes $1.8 to $2 million a year at the same rate. So I'm very concerned, and I'm still very concerned at the amount of taxes that are being imposed on our residents that really Mountain View County itself has nothing to say about. So again, we're getting a school requisition increase of $2 million. We're getting a Mountain View Senior Housing requisition of $120,000 to $150,000 a year. There is no room anymore. There's very limited room for Mountain View County to actually increase taxes without putting a huge burden on our ratepayers. So I think we do still need to go back to Mountain View Senior Housing and ask why there is still a 6% increase year on year. I mean, it is still a significant increase, and I think it does still just need to be questioned, and it still just needs to be, there needs to be a little bit more information provided. We saw that some of the, the loans and the debt is going to move off. So just, again, it's one of the questions that I would like us to just get more information on, because I think 6% year on year is still a big whack to Mountain View County residents. So I do applaud the board. I think that the turnaround and the transparency that has come from the board and the presentation was great. But I'm still concerned as to the significant increase. Better than taking loans for operating, though. I'll give you that. Absolutely every day of the week. Transparency is key. And I think that Mountain View Senior Housing did an excellent job with the transparency. So they should be commended. Chair Fulton, I think that that under your guidance and your leadership, it's the presentation was very, very good. Just a note for council, if you could maybe put on your thinking cap. So I've been asked to have a meeting with the president and some of the staff from FCM at our RMA conference. They have set up a room on the Monday, and I don't know who they've all invited, but they asked if I would be willing to come and have a chat with them. I said, absolutely. So if there's anything that we want to give as feedback, Councillor Harris, I'd love if you jot it. No, but I mean, this is where the change is going to come, if any change is going to come. So if anyone has anything that they would like to say, or if you would like to attend with me, please, it's at 3 o'clock on Monday in Salon 20 at the conference on Monday. So if any councillor would like to attend, absolutely, I would love you to come and have your say. I don't know how long the meeting is going to be, but that's going to happen there. I went to the Leadership Caucus, the President Summit and the Leadership Caucus in Edmonton. AB Muniz puts that on. President Summit was pretty dry. It was a lot on, of course, the next election. So I didn't find that we were really getting a lot of information on, what the issues are with AB munis. But just some highlights from Minister McIver, when he did his quick introduction on one of the days. I sent it around, so right now they're doing an online survey for the Land and Property Rights Tribunal, if anyone has anything they'd like to give feedback on that. Minister McIver said that they are going to be putting something forward for recall legislation, so they've heard that it's almost impossible in the large cities to do recall legislation, and in the smaller towns and villages, the recall legislation is too easy. So they have recognized that there needs to be, it's not a one size fits all and it's not an overall percentage. So they're going to do a review on that, and we should be expecting some feedback on the recall legislation soon. He gave an update on the ICF regulations or legislation, whatever they're going to come forward with. He said all of the court cases have now been wrapped up. So now is the time that they want to do those changes or implement those changes. He was very clear that the government wasn't going to touch this if they were still in any kind of judicial review. So again, we can expect some of that coming forward. Chestermere came forward to the mic and they were very upset with the increase in the education tax and how it imposes on municipalities and how it reflects poorly on municipalities, because we have to include the education tax and it looks like it's our increase. So we've done a quick review of that, and average increase to the households in Mountain View County will be somewhere around $228 based on what they've imposed on us. So Minister McIver said he would send out a letter to all municipalities regarding the increase in the education tax. So at least we had something from the province to say this is the province imposing this on municipalities to collect on behalf of them. Maybe something we want to put in our tax notices. I don't know. Wait and see when we get the letter. On the downside, he said education costs are going to continue to increase, and we can expect to see the education tax continuing to increase. He did mention that out of the education tax, only 31.6 of what's collected is actually the bucket. So the cost of education is only 31.6% collected through the education tax, and the rest is collected through other revenue sources from the provincial government. So yeah, lots on that. So it was quite interesting, some good information. Nate Horner repeatedly told everyone that the province was broke, and so don't come ask for any more money because we're not going to give it to you because we're broke. And I think he said that probably 6 times or 7 times in the Bear Pit session. Let's see, Sundry Wellness. We had the Sundry Wellness meeting. We shared our resolution. And so Sundry is just waiting to see if our resolution actually passes and whether or not there's any amendments at the RMA conference. And then Sundry will be taking that forward to put that resolution forward in June, if that works. Sorry. Mayor Warnock said he would take it to his council to see whether or not they would support bringing it to the AM conference. So I thought that was quite good. Let's see. So the meeting with Minister Nixon, interesting thing out of that meeting was I asked Minister Nixon what he felt of the budget, and he said, I understand that probably most of your communities are upset that there was no increase in the FCSS. I didn't realize this, and I thought it was a great point of information. Out of every dollar that they increased from the province in FCSS, 74 cents goes to both Edmonton and Calgary. And so his feedback on that was perhaps just increasing FCSS dollar amounts may not provide the financial relief that rural municipalities are looking at, because such a small percentage goes to rural municipalities versus the city. So it just gave me something to think about as far as the advocacy efforts that GMP might look at, which is, again, is there some sort of a rural stream we can look at? Is there some sort of a grant changes to the way the grants are administered and some of the rules behind the ways the grants are utilized? So I'll be taking that to Greenwood Neighborhood Place. But I thought that was a really interesting bit of information that everyone should know on that. Let's see. RMA conference coming up. We won't have another council meeting before the RMA conference. So I did send out to all of council the current agenda for the Mayors and Reeves meeting. Again, if you have anything that you would like to be addressed at that Mayors and Reeves meeting, please just send me a note. Give me some background information and I can add it to the floor or send it to Dwayne because Dwayne will probably attend as well. And the AGNO, so I sent that out, virtual sessions. So we missed the one on the 11th, but there is the one on the 14th. Linda Hunt was really good to make sure that that I got that information to share with everyone. So great connection with Linda, and that is all because of the Ag Service Board Conference and our ability to actually meet with Linda face to face and demonstrate that I think Mountain View County really does want to help AGNO in any way we can. And so I was really super pleased when Linda reached out to say, hey, would you guys like to attend this session? I think that was great. So hopefully some of the ASB members can make it as well. And then obviously the women's lunch, the International Women's Day, just an absolutely amazing event. Thank you to staff for attending. We did have our ministers couldn't make it because of a special caucus meeting that was set up for that day, and I was just absolutely thrilled that some of our staff members could come in and attend the event as well. And I will be hopefully traveling up, depending on the weather, in case we get a huge dump of snow, I'll be traveling up to Edmonton tomorrow for a meeting with Minister McIver regarding the South Red Deer Regional Wastewater Commission. Hopefully the minister will show up to this one, not like the last one. So we're hopeful. It's a long travel for a 15-minute meeting, but you take them when you can get them and you hope that they're going to be as successful as possible. So I'm looking forward to that. And I just saw that we put road bans on. So I heard on the radio that Red Deer County has also put their road bans on. So I'm sure Shelley's doing a great job in trying to push that out and make sure everyone's aware of the road bans. Happy to see that everything is getting real soft. So that's all I had. It seems like it was a hugely busy 2 weeks, and I think the next 2 weeks are going to be really busy as well. Is everyone planning to attend RMA and then outside maybe over lunch if anyone needs transportation or whatever, then we can do that at lunchtime.
I can't go.
Understand. All right. Any other discussion on council reports? Councillor Johnson.
Just a quick question. A couple people had referred to the Bergen Area Structure Plan. I wondered if the next meeting date had been set, because I think that the intent was that the public were going to be invited to that. So I just wondered if that was going to, if the public were going to be invited and if that date had been set.
I think all of the area structure plan meetings are public meetings. They're all open meetings, are they not?
Yes, they are all open to the public, so the public can join in person or online. But when council approved the terms of reference for the Bergen ASP review, there was an addition added that at an early stage, there'd be public engagement so that the public has an opportunity to help identify the issues, concerns, and opportunities within the area that could inform the ASP as the review has gone through. So there's no date identified for that engagement. That will probably be considered during the next meeting.
Thank you.
Excellent. Okay, so with that, I will ask for a motion to receive all those reports. Councillor Lutz. Any further discussion? All right, with that, I will call the question. All in favor? And that motion is carried. Oh boy, I talked so long that my computer shut down on me. Thanks. Okay, so we have information items. I think we've got a couple of contact newsletters. And the invitation to the Reed Ranch Playground. So, Councillor Lutz, do you want to talk about the invitation to the Reed Ranch Playground?
No, just that the playground for the community size of it, it's spectacular. I hope you can all make it, and if you've got kids or grandkids, bring them, because it's really cool and the kids love it.
Excellent. And is there any discussion on the two contact newsletters? No? So can I have a motion to accept all of the information items, please? Moved by Councillor Johnson. Any further discussion? Call to question, all in favor? And that motion is carried. Whoa, okay, so we have our delegation coming in at 11:30. So maybe we'll take a break till 11:25. Oh, sorry, Jeff.
Yeah, so Reeve, our delegation can start early. She's ready to go, I think, anytime council's ready.
Oh, right, it's virtual.
Yeah, it's virtual.
Right,
So
okay.
if you want to take a break, that's okay. But our delegation, as I understand it, is ready to go whenever council's ready.
No, let's let's go right into our delegation then. Thank you for that. So Jeff, sorry, I'm just wondering, because Margaret, I'm just wondering, because we do actually advertise this and we put a special specific time of 11:30. If anyone does want to attend this online or in person to hear this, should we not wait till 11:30? Just process wise, I want to make sure that if anyone does want to attend in person, that we haven't finished it.
Yeah, I mean, certainly that's at council's discretion. It is recorded and saved, so it can be viewed at any point in time. But if it is, if council is of the opinion that it's important to stick with the schedule, then that's perfectly fine.
And you know what? Because this was such a community-driven event, I don't know whether or not we're going to have anyone from the area that participated in it show up in person. I would hate for someone to be traveling 45 minutes and then all of a sudden realize that we had done the agenda item. So I am going to ask that we just come back at 11:30 to do this, just in fairness. So we'll take a break until 11:30. Because there's no point in going in closed session, right? If that makes it too difficult with no, we'll wait till 11:30. Woo, look at that. Councillor Fulton. Okay, so we will resume the regular council meeting of March 12th. Oh, I've just skipped us ahead a couple of months. March 12th. And we are on agenda item 5.1. That's the South McDougall Flats Well Testing Project Report. And we have Pamela joining us virtually. So thank you very much for coming. So with that, I will turn it over to you for your presentation. Oh, sorry, Margaretta, do you want to do the introduction? I'm sorry.
Yes, thank you, Reeve. So the report is on page 143 of your agenda. So as part of the background information, when the county reviewed the South McDougall Flats Area Structure Plan in 2024, there was residents that raised concerns regarding groundwater quality. Alberta Health Services at the time confirmed that there are no identified concerns with the quality of the water or with health risks associated with well water consumption in the area at the time. However, there continued to be some questions from the landowners, and together Alberta Health Services and Mountain View County jointly decided to do a project in the area. So the project would encourage residents to submit their water samples free of charge for their routine chemical and biological testing. Again, a letter was sent out to 234 residents within South McDougall Flats, requesting them to participate within the project. In addition to that, there was also 2 working well workshops hosted in October of last year. So the testing was offered free of charge and would run for a specific time from October 1st to November 15th to be included within this project. Again, it would help to establish a better comprehensive and current baseline of the water quality, which will aid the monitoring of local water quality over time. As a result of the project, there was a total of 42 bacteriological and 41 chemical samples. And what you will see in the report, there was also 34 historical chemical results that was included. Today, Pamela Kutuadu from Alberta Health Services, who is a public inspector for the Central Zone, will present the project report. So she is available to take us through the report.
Thank you, Margaretta, and I am sorry I did not let you do your introduction prior. Pamela.
All right, perfect. So everyone can see my slides and hear me okay?
So just one moment, Pamela, we can see you perfect. Do we need to put the slides on the screen at the same time as Pamela, or can council just follow along with in their agenda? Is it necessary to be able to see the slides? I know we have someone in virtually. Can we see the slides as well? Jeff?
Yeah, I'll ask Laura to get the slides and the video sorted there so that anyone watching it after the fact has the benefit
Perfect.
of seeing both at the same time.
Okay, thank you. Just bear with us for a second here, Pamela.
So Pamela, we're ready for you to share your screen when you're ready.
Oh, sorry. I thought
Nope,
I
that's
had
okay.
done that already. Share screen. Beautiful. Technology is great when it works. So,
Perfect.
Perfect, thank you.
yeah, okay. Perfect. So, Margaretta kind of basically already gave a bit of an overview. We did prepare a formal executive summary as well, which basically goes over that historical context that Margaretta has already alluded to. And that is the summary that is found here. Did you want me to read it for the benefit of those that may watch the recording later?
Sure.
Sure. Okay. So as part of the Mountain View County South McDougall Flats Area Structure Plan in early 2024, residents had raised some concerns about groundwater quality. And so to better understand the groundwater quality in the area, Alberta Health Services partnered with Mountain View County for this project. So the owners within the South McDougall Flats area specifically were mailed letters at the end of August to inform them of the project and encourage their participation. As part of this project, the county also hosted 2 free working well workshops that were hosted at the Sundre Royal Canadian Legion, open to all residents of Mountain View County, not just those within the South McDougall Flats. And this workshop is a longstanding nonprofit organization that provides this training in partnership with the Government of Alberta to provide well owners with information and the tools needed to protect and care for their water wells and drinking water supplies. In total, we had 59 individuals attend those 2 workshops over the 2 days. And so we also encouraged homeowners to submit chemical and bacteriological samples through Alberta Health Services to establish a more comprehensive current baseline for local water quality. We also undertook a historical review of samples, chemical samples specifically, that had been submitted between January 21st and September of 2024 to ensure that anyone who had previously submitted within the past 3 years had their results included. And this is due to a policy that ACFT has, the Alberta Centre for Toxicology, where they only allow for chemical testing every 3 to 5 years. So we didn't want anyone who had sampled last year or the year prior to feel like they were going to miss out on an opportunity to have their water quality included in the study. So we made sure to do a retrospective look back to include any historical results in that. In total, we did have, Margaret has already alluded to the numbers, and we have some slides coming up where we'll show a better breakdown of what those sample results look like, both within the bacteriological quality as well as the chemical quality. In total, we did look at 75 chemical samples, including the historical information and those that were submitted as part of the project timeline. And the overall finding from everything was that we found that from those who had submitted water samples, the groundwater quality appears to have lower levels of parameters of concern when compared to the historical local watersheds, that's the Red Deer River watershed, as well as the entire provincial water quality comparison. We, as part of this project, have also worked out with Alberta Centre for Toxicology that in 3 years, so in 2027, they will agree to allow for us to do this pool of sampling again so that we can see if there's been any change over that 3-year period in the chemical water quality as well. So this is the what is the word I'm looking for? Land use districts within the South McDougall Flats area that was provided by the county, and this was the basis that we used for screening if people were within the South McDougall Flats area or not, was based off of their legal land description if it fell within the geographical boundaries of this map. Some important information just regarding the data that is included in this report. The information, a lot of it for the historical comparator for the province and the watershed, where that was obtained from was a database called the Alberta Environmental Public Health Information Network, or APHIN. It is a publicly accessible, so all of the information here is publicly available. And I actually, at the end of the presentation, will open up that database and I can show you guys how to navigate through that in case anyone ever wants to pursue additional information further beyond South McDougall Flats. So maybe if someone's a county resident and they're interested in what the historical water quality is outside of South McDougall Flats, then I can show you how they can look up that information through that database as well. Another important information is that there have been some changes to the Canadian Drinking Water Quality Guidelines over the years. So the Health Canada has added new maximum acceptable concentrations. So these are chemical parameters within water quality that when you have a level above this MAC number, is potentially associated with some kind of negative health effect for some population demographic. Often the most sensitive demographic that is used to set these levels is children or pregnant and breastfeeding women. And so there have been some parameters where a MAC has now been created within the last few years, or they have changed and lowered that MAC. And so an example is that with copper, there was historically only a aesthetic objective, which is another classification of the chemical levels used by the Canadian Drinking Water Quality Guidelines. And that's a level at which when
stand
you
by, I
exceed
know we
that.
have some issues, so we're good.
Okay, you're good?
Yep.
Okay, so an aesthetic objective is the level at which you might start to notice some impacts to the desirability of your water. So it tastes a little off, it looks a little different, it doesn't smell nice. It can also cause maintenance issues within your water system. So a perfect example of this is iron. So when you have high iron in your water, it doesn't make you sick. There's nothing wrong with having high iron, but it gives you that buildup in your plumbing fixtures. And you'll often see that in a brown or reddish color discoloration in your toilet bowl or in your bathtub. Another example would be something like hardness. So when you have high hardness in your water, you're just going to see scale buildup in your tea kettle and stuff like that. So there's no negative health effect associated with it at that level. It causes maintenance or aesthetic issues. With copper, there historically had only been an aesthetic objective, and they added a maximum acceptable level within the last few years. They also added a MAC. So historically, there was only an aesthetic objective for manganese. And in 2019, the Health Canada had added a MAC for manganese. And so when you look at the historical data within AFIN, it's not as easy to tease out what might have been an AO versus a MAC. You have to actually look at the levels that are being reported. And I can show you how we suss that out a little bit further. There also was a change where they lowered the lead MAC. So it used to be 0.01, and they changed that to 0.005. So it's been cut in half within the last 5 years as well. We will talk about some parameters where there was the lead exceedances. In the cases where we found a lead exceedance, often lead exceedances are associated with stagnant water. It's very rare for it to be in source water. And most of the time when we retest where there was a previous lead exceedance, we will find that when they do a flushed sample, so when they don't just let the water sit in the lines overnight, but they actually run the water for 5 minutes and then take a resample, it usually takes care of the lead issue. And that's because it's often associated with lead containing solder or fittings within the plumbing distribution system or within the household. So especially if someone's really handy and they've done their own household repairs for plumbing issues, quite often there's lead containing solder and materials that they have used. And that can flag erroneously for a lead exceedance in your private drinking water. And so our recommendation in those situations is always that the people submit a retest. And so that would have been the advice that was provided by the local inspectors. But our recommendation can be to specifically follow up with these people again and encourage them to do a flushed test, just so that they can get a more accurate representation of whether they're actually at risk of lead exposure in their drinking water or not. For the other data sources on the right-hand side of this slide, all of the bacteriological samples are submitted to the Alberta Precision Lab. So it's a provincial laboratory. There's two, one in Edmonton, one in Calgary. In Central Zone, all of our water samples go to the Edmonton Provincial Lab. So all of the bacteriological samples as part of this study were processed at the Edmonton Alberta Precision Labs location. And then all of the chemical samples are processed at the Alberta Centre for Toxicology, located at the University of Calgary campus. And so that's where all of the chemical results were obtained from. Just as far as the timeline of the project, as Margaretta had indicated, on August 30th, we sent a letter to all of the MVC South McDougall Flats residents to come and participate. And then on September 11th, I met with the local community health center staff there in Sundre, just in case they were getting questions from people coming in and dropping off their water samples, just so they were better informed about that was. As well, to hopefully, our hope was to prepare for a massive influx in water samples coming in, so that they had enough coolers and water samples and bottles and such to prepare to meet that demand. And then in October, on the 7th and 8th, we had two working well workshops. We'll break down the participation of that in the coming slides. And then we invited people to submit samples. And as far as this project goes, so the project code was assigned to all water samples submitted between October 1st and November 15th. And then we included all water samples that were submitted within the South McDougall Flats under that project code within the data that was analyzed for this project. On December 30th, Alberta Center for Toxicology had finalized their data and sent it to us. And this is because it can take up to 4 to 6 weeks for chemical samples to get processed. And so we just wanted to allow for sufficient time for ACFT to get those chemical samples processed and then to send us the finalized data as far as those that were included within the project. And then here we are in Q1 of 2025 with the finalized report. This is the breakdown of the Working Well workshop attendance for the first session held on October 7th. So in total, we had 60 people in attendance. When we account for presenters and hosts, there was actually 42 individuals who had attended this session, and they represented 36 unique households that we had identified. From that, we didn't see as much water samples being submitted by attendees of the workshop as we had hoped. It could be that some of them were people who had historical water samples that had been submitted in the past 3 years, or they weren't concerned about the bacteriological quality. I'm not sure. But in the end, from that workshop, we did have 4 households that had submitted just a chemical sample. 1 household only submitted 1 bacteriological, and then 6 households did submit both a chemical and a bacteriological sample. From the October 8th session, we had a little bit less attendance there. In total, we had 17 participants from the community come, and from that, we had an estimated 15 unique households. And from there, 3 households submitted both a chemical and bacteriological samples from within the project area. And so we didn't have anybody who only submitted a chemical or only submitted a Bac-T. It was just the 3 households that had submitted both a chemical and bacteriological from within the project area. So looking at the total samples that were processed, so in total, along the way, we actually had originally had quite a bit higher numbers that we thought were within the project area. But once we did some mapping, we identified that some people had submitted samples using the project code that were actually outside of the South McDougall Flats area. So then we had to remove them from the data that was then pooled and analyzed for the purposes of this report. So this report looks at 39 bacteriological samples that were submitted between October 1st and November 15th, and then a total of 75 chemical samples, 41 of those coming from the project period of October 1st to November 15th, and then 34 from the historical look back, which would have gone from January of 2021 to September of 2024. What we see here is we started out really strong in the first couple of weeks of the project, where this graph here just breaks down the number of bacteriological samples that were submitted each week during the operations of the project. So it started out really strong, and then it started to wean off towards the end of the project window. Looking at samples is terms of what were the results. So we use a term called satisfactory in environmental public health. And what satisfactory means is that there was no coliforms and no E. coli present. E. coli and coliforms are the 2 parameters that we test for when we do bacteriological testing. E. coli is the same one you find in your hamburger and your manure that people are concerned about, that causes foodborne illness or waterborne illness. So it is definitely pathogenic and can cause sickness, whereas total coliforms are non-pathogenic. They do not make you sick. They are found pretty much everywhere in the environment in terms of like soil. They can be found in fecal matter and sewage, but they shouldn't be in your drinking water. In particular, groundwater. They shouldn't be in groundwater. So we use them as something called an indicator organism, as an indication that something got into the sample. And so what we found when we looked at all the results was there was no samples came back with E. coli, which is fantastic. And we did have 3 samples that got flagged with total coliforms. Now, in my 17 years as a health inspector, what I would say is that 90% of the time when we get a coliform hit, as we call it, so the presence of total coliforms in a water sample, it's because someone didn't follow proper sampling protocol. So they didn't wash their hands, or they didn't remove the aerator screen. Maybe they touched the inside of the bottle or the cap when they were collecting the sample, something to that effect. So in those situations, what we do is we just ask people to resample right away. with their making sure that they strictly follow the sampling protocol instructions. And we did that in this case, and all three of those situations where they previously had a coliform hit, those all came back as satisfactory. So in this situation, there was no indication that bacteriological quality was in question within the South McDougall Flats area. Looking at the chemical samples, this is where it starts to get quite a bit more nuanced and a lot more detailed because we're talking about more than just two parameters. There's quite a few parameters that we look at for chemical quality. And then we're also looking at a comparison of the historical data versus the project timeline from October 1st to November 15th. So what we found when looking at, again, all 75 results, so everything from January 21st to November 15th of 2024, what we found was that the majority of water samples were satisfactory. And what we mean when we say satisfactory in chemical quality is that there was no MAC exceedance. So again, a reminder, the MAC exceedance is the maximum acceptable concentration set by Health Canada in the Canadian Drinking Water Quality Guidelines. And it's the level at which, when it's exceeded, there is a potential negative health impact for the most vulnerable demographic. And we do consider water samples that contain an aesthetic objective exceedance as still satisfactory because there's no negative health impact for the population from consuming that water, but it may affect the desirability and taste of the water, but we do still consider it to be satisfactory, okay? The majority of samples from both the historical and the project code data had no exceedances. Sometimes we did have both a MAC exceedance and an AO exceedance, but sometimes there was only a MAC or only an AO exceedance. In the next few slides, we're going to break down what that looked like. So from the chart, you can see here, just historically, you may note that I keep saying that the historical look back went from January of 2021, but yet this chart doesn't include 2021. That's because we did not find any water samples submitted in 2021 that were within the South McDougall Flats area. So we've only graphed the results for the years from which we did have results. So from 2022, all of the results were satisfactory. In 2023, we had one MAC exceedance. The rest were all satisfactory. In 2024, I've broken it out into quarters 1 to 3. So that would be the historical samples from January 1st to September of 2024. In that time frame, we had 2 MAC exceedances and 18 satisfactory samples. And then the project that operated from October 1st to November 15th of 2024, we had 4 MAC exceedances and 37 satisfactory results. So in total, you can see that we had 7 MAC exceedances, so 7 samples with a MAC exceedance, and 68 samples that were satisfactory. When we looked at the breakdown of where the exceedances were coming from, we found that, and I've broken it down so you can see the comparison of historical to the project timeline from October 1st to November 15th, and just to see how many of those were aesthetic objective only exceedances, how many were a MAC only exceedance, how many samples had no exceedances at all, and then the total number of samples altogether. So this slide is talking about the chemical parameters that were tested and then analyzed as part of this report. And so majority of the chemical parameters that are tested for in our routine testing and trace metals testing actually came back as not detected. And so that would include everything here on the left-hand side, aluminum, antimonium, barium, boron, cadmium, chromium, mercury, selenium, uranium, and as well as nitrates and nitrites. So all of those came back as not detected in all of the samples that we looked at, all 75. So we have included here in this table just a breakdown to visualize what the representation was in terms of the MAC exceedances that we had, and then the table shows you which parameters those were for, which AO exceedances we had, and then again which parameters those were associated with, how many samples had these parameters not detected,
and how many of the samples came back as being below the MAC or below the aesthetic objective. Now, because this is quite busy and quite colorful, we're just going to focus on the ones that were having exceedances. And so this chart here, we'll notice that there was 26 unique exceedances from those 7 samples. And this just breaks down how many of those we had. So the aesthetic objectives are for iron, total dissolved solids, that's what TDS stands for, sodium, and then you'll notice that manganese and copper have both an aesthetic objective as well as a maximum acceptable concentration. And then the parameters with only a MAC are lead and fluoride. And so this just breaks down how many of those exceedances and where they came from. This is just another visualization of that exact same information. So you can see how many samples did we have that came from the project code of MVC SMF24 here is it actually, let me use my laser pointer so you can see what I'm talking about, is the project code for October 1st to November 15th. And then the historical is those ones that were submitted from 2022 to September of 2024. And so we've just broken this down because some people prefer tables, some people prefer charts as a way to show how many samples had a MAC exceedance, what parameters they were for, how many samples had a pass or were satisfactory. So that would include those that had no exceedances at all and those that had an aesthetic objective exceedance. And then we've indicated here the breakdown of what parameters those were for. Okay. This is, again, another visualization. Just some people like a chart, some people like a graph, some people like it visualized a little bit further. And what we've added here is that we've compared the South McDougall Flats, all 75 samples in purple, to the provincial average. So what do we see as being average for groundwater quality in all of Alberta, as well as a more local comparison of what is average for the Red Deer River watershed. And so what you can see here, and just to make note here, unless otherwise indicated as an aesthetic objective, all of these things are max, so maximum acceptable concentrations. And what we did find was that in all cases, the water quality in South McDougall Flats was at provincial average or below average across the board. Same thing for the Red Deer River watershed. It was at average or below average for the reported levels of these parameters of concern. I do want to take time to make a note that the project sample size was really quite small when we're comparing the numbers of water samples coming from the watershed comparison and the provincial data pools. So we're talking about 75 samples here, whereas in the provincial number we're looking at tens of thousands kind of comparison. This is just another summary chart that shows the same information as the previous graph, and it just shows the breakdown of those MAC exceedances for those who like to have a summary chart to refer back to. Again, just reiterating that we didn't find any historical samples in 2021. So the historical includes the January of 2022 to September of 2024. This chart here is basically the wordy version of that graph where we compared it to the provincial average and the watershed average. So we've included here the comparison to both of those. What I did want to note was that, and I'll show you this when we go to the AFIN database, is that prior to 2019, Alberta Center for Toxicology only did what we call routine household testing. Trace metals analysis was not part of their standard testing protocol, and then they added it in 2019. So the AFIN database has a smaller data pool for trace metals specifically. So that would be things like arsenic and lead and strontium and antimonium and uranium, those kinds of things.
So the amount of samples that would be trace metals related is much smaller than the routine parameters, which would be things like manganese, TDS, iron, sulfates, nitrates, those kinds of things. So in 2019, Alberta Center for Toxicology made that part of our routine testing. So since 2019, we have tested both types of parameters. And AFIN hasn't received its most latest data dump of all of those routine samples that have been done from 2019 to 2024. We're hoping that they're going to get another big data dump in the next few months that would include those 5 years of data. And then we can include that in our 2027 comparison. Or if for those who are interested in kind of keeping up with this prior to 2027, once we get that next dump of data from 2019 to 2024 populated into the provincial database, the public database, then people can kind of go in and play and see themselves how South McDougall Flats compares. So what I've done here is I've just shown at the top, I'm just trying to see if I can get this laser pointer to work. There we go. So this laser, I'm hoping you can see the laser pointer. So at the top here, we've got all of the parameters that were where we found some kind of exceedance or where the common exceedances are. And then I've indicated whether it's an aesthetic objective or a MAC and what the level is for the aesthetic objective or the MAC. The units that are used here are milligrams per liter or parts per million. And then the next line indicates the total number of samples that we had that was above that exceedance. So for example, with sodium here, we had 5 samples out of the 75 with a aesthetic objective exceedance for sodium. They constituted 6.7% of all of the project samples. When I looked at those that were submitted between October 1st and November 15th of 2024, it was 3 out of the 41 samples representing 7.3%. When I looked at the historical, there was 2 out of the 34 representing 5.9%. I then looked at the provincial average, and the provincial average is that 62% of groundwater wells in Alberta have an exceedance of sodium. And the average concentration or the median concentration of groundwater sodium in Alberta is 250 milligrams per liter. I did the same thing looking at the local Red Deer River watershed, and historically 60% of groundwater wells in the Red Deer River watershed have an exceedance for sodium, and the average level or median level is 233 milligrams per liter. And so the South McDougall Flats, whether you looked at the combined pooled rate or each of those individual rates, it was still below average when compared to the province or the Red Deer River watershed. And so I've broken that down and given a final comparison description for all of these parameters. So sodium, total dissolved solids, sulfate, arsenic, copper, fluoride, lead, manganese, nitrates, and nitrites. Okay. I know you guys probably historically wait till the very end to ask for questions, but I'm totally okay if anyone has a question now from council that they wanted to ask about this chart, if there was anything that you wanted me to explain further, because I know Margaretta had some really good questions when I introduced this to her.
So Pamela, maybe we'll just, if you can kind of try and wrap up
Sure.
in the next couple of minutes, and then we'll open it up to questions from council.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. We were curious to look and see if well age and well depth factored in at all. Unfortunately, we didn't get enough people consistently providing information on the age of their well and the depth of their well for us to be able to draw any meaningful comparisons on whether the exceedances were associated with older wells or shallower wells. Which historically, again, in all my years as a health inspector, we do typically find that deeper wells have more chemical or mineral content, and that shallow wells are more vulnerable to influences from runoff and stuff like that. But we did not have enough consistent reporting of that information to be able to make any meaningful conclusions in the case of this project. So what everyone I think was probably hoping to see, which is we decided to GIS map all of this information. So the link here to the GIS mapping system is here. Let me just escape. This is the GIS mapping system. It should work for anybody who has the link. There is a table or layers feature over here where it explains the legend, what each of the different colored dots means. We've overlaid it over the land use districts within the South McDougall Flats area. And then you can also have the option of being able to pick what layer of data you want to see. So if you don't care about the land use designations, you can just uncheck the land use designations. If you just want to see the bacteriological data, you can pick the bacteriological data. If you just want to see the chemical data, you can select the chemical data. Another feature that we have here is also, get the legend up there for people. There's a time lapse feature. So if you click the little clock up here, what happens is down on the bar here, you can see going back to 2022, how many samples did we have then? Or you could move the bar along and it just shows over time based by quarter, how many samples you had in each quarter. Or if you slide it all the way to the very end, then you will see those that were submitted within the October 1st to November 15th. If you don't want to have a time lapse feature, you just click out the X, and then you can see all samples that were submitted, all 75 chemical and all 39 bacteriological here. At any point in time during that as well, you can click the little arrow here at the bottom, and it will show you the table of what all of those results are, the legal land description from which it came, and what the final result was for that. So it's, if people want to go in and play with this and take a look at it to understand, it's totally there and available for people to go and take a look at. I said if we had time, I could show you the AFIN database. I've included the link in the presentation.
So Pamela, I think maybe we'll just let council work through that link, just given the time frame, and maybe I'll just open the floor to councilors. And thank you very much for your presentation, very informative. So I want to make sure we have sufficient time for questions from council. So I'll open the floor for council. Councillor Johnson.
Thanks for your excellent presentation, Pamela. My question is from, it's our page 161 on your presentation. The top of that slide says chemical samples. And I just want to check if my understanding is correct. So on that slide, I see a total of 19 aesthetic exceedances and 7 MAC exceedances. So that comes out to a total of 26 out of 75 exceedances, which represents just over a third. So is that about what you would expect from the average amount, like the average samples submitted to your lab, that about a third of them would see exceedances?
Yeah, so it's actually below. And the reason for that, and that's where this slide is really helpful, where you see that we actually find that, you know, a very large percentage, I would say almost 3/4, sometimes half to 3/4, have some kind of aesthetic objective exceedance, whether it's total dissolved solids, sodium, lead, iron. Iron's a really common one that we see in central Alberta. So I actually would say it's much lower than I would have expected.
Thank you.
Hey, is there any other questions? Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Pamela. Just a question on page 169, you made the statement and it's regarding water quality, but looking at the graph, you said we had lower water quality, but that really isn't lower quality.
So, yeah.
And we were under the exceedance by the rest of the province, so we actually had better water quality.
That's correct. You had lower levels of parameters of concern.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that statement.
Thank you. That's an excellent question to clarify. So you had lower levels of parameters of concern in the South McDougall Flats for those that had submitted samples.
Thank you.
Councillor Lutz.
Maybe a two-part question. When you looked at the age of wells, did you also look at well maintenance and and the people that did have exceedances, they were informed so maybe they could do some more well maintenance?
Yeah, unfortunately, that the scope of this project did not include a qualitative element of discussing with homeowners about how they maintain their wells. That is a discussion that is included in our follow-up phone calls to homeowners. So if they have a MAC exceedance, whether that's for the presence of coliforms or E. coli, or any of those chemical parameters, our inspectors do review with the person when they call them to talk about it, how to better take care of their well. We provide some general information about siting, drainage, well caps, regular shocking maintenance of their wells. And then we will also provide advice on treatment options that they can look at utilizing for their systems as well. But no, it was not included in the scope of this project.
Thank you. And did you have a second question? Nope. Okay. Councillor Johnson.
Just one additional question, if I might. I was at a presentation where Dr. Bernard Meyer and Jessica Liggett are looking at water samples Alberta-wide at the whole groundwater system. And my understanding is that as you go farther east, that things like the aesthetic water quality does get worse. So is there any comparison, sort of, we are lucky to be on the western side of the province. Is there any comparison between the South McDougall Flats and other sort of western Alberta samples compared to eastern Alberta samples?
Yeah, so that's where this AFIN database can be really handy. So you can go and you can zoom in on any geographical area. So in this case, I've kind of just zoomed in around Sundre, so you could see the South McDougall Flats area, but you can zoom out and you can look at the water quality anywhere in the province where people have submitted samples. And so if you wanted to look at that more eastern portion, you can absolutely do that. You can take a look at any of the parameters that you want to look at. So the aesthetic related things would be the suitability for drinking. There's also some questions about household use, so that relates to some of the other things like hardness that I talked about. There's also things that have a health affiliation, and there's also the trace metals. Again, I did mention that we're waiting for a nice data dump, so you can see how sparse the trace metals data is. There's not a lot of great data there. But yeah, you absolutely can take a look at. You can also, they've got a grouping here where you can take a look at it by watershed. So you could go and you could select just the watershed that you wanted to look at. So an easterly one might be something more like portions of the North Saskatchewan or the Bow watershed. So or the South Saskatchewan would be even more easterly. So you could take a look at any one of those watersheds. You can also select it and look at it by census division as well. And then it'll visualize all the information for you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So Pamela, I've got two, and this is maybe a follow-up to Councillor Lutz's question. So were only people that had either MAC or an AO exceedance contacted regarding their water samples, or was everyone sent or is everyone that submits a sample, do they receive feedback on the results of their sample?
Yeah, so for the bacteriological samples, unfortunately, a policy change happened in May of 2024, where only those who have an unsatisfactory bacteriological sample, so only the people who have a total coliforms or E. coli hit will get a phone call from Alberta Health Services to talk about their water sample results. And we'll actually receive and then if they talk to the health inspector, we'll get an electronic copy emailed to them. We used to send out paper copies of all of the water sample results for bacteriological samples prior to that. But a decision made 5 pay grades above me was that we would no longer do that in 2024. So it's a no news is good news situation, unfortunately. For chemical samples, everyone receives their results. So even if they're satisfactory, they receive their results, whether it's by email, if they put their email address on the requisition form, or by paper. They'll be sent a copy in the mail. It's just a phone call if there's a MAC exceedance. That's the only time the health inspector makes a phone call, is if there's a MAC exceedance. But anytime someone has a question about their water sample results, they can always call the health inspector, and we are happy to provide any advice or troubleshoot with them.
Thank you. And maybe just one last question, because when you see MAC exceedance, I think everyone does just automatically get concerned because it's a maximal allowable exceedance. So looking at this, looking at your overview of the provincial and the Red Deer River watershed, we're below the exceedance levels. But what exceedance level does it take before the province actually would take action? Like what's the actual meaning of these MAC exceedances? And when would the province get involved to say, this is unacceptable water quality, we need to do something?
Ooh, that's a good question. I would have to suss that out a little further to know. I think that there would be conversations with Alberta Environment on that when you're looking at watershed protection, as there is a portfolio within them that goes beyond our portfolio within health. When it comes to private drinking water supplies, we provide advice to people. So any one of the people that we spoke to about their MAC exceedances in their water can still choose to use that water. We don't tell them they must. We provide advice on what they could or should do. It's different when you're getting into regulated water sources. So, for example, if someone had a catering business out of their home, that they also use this private water well for that catering business, and then that water is used in the preparation of food that is then sold to the public. We have a regulatory role where we can require them to treat that water to a certain quality to make sure that it's safe for the broader public. Municipal systems, those fall under the jurisdiction of Alberta Environment and Protected Areas. And so I do believe they are continually looking at watershed quality management, and that would be something that they are broadly looking at. But as far as what threshold within private water supplies might be a flag for them, I couldn't speak to that, unfortunately. Maybe that's something of that research from Dr. Bernard and Jessica Leggett that will come out.
Okay, and so just to confirm though, I think it's important from the sampling and from your report, there's nothing that shows that any of this water is not fit for human consumption, and it's a safe source of water in every sample.
There are certain ones that we did flag. So, for example, there are some that did have fluoride exceedances. Fluoride max are set for children with growing teeth, so children up to about the age of 8. And so we would do on a one-on-one consultation with the household and look at, based off of the levels that were reported in their water, do they have children in the home? Then we would advise on a one-on-one if they should look at installing some kind of treatment. Lead, again, we would look on a one-on-one basis. We would do a flushed retest, look at what the actual source water quality was like, and then we could provide some advice on whether point of use treatment would be recommended for those people. So there are definitely a couple of households where some additional questions need to be asked and considered for their individual uses. But across the board, if I was to generally categorize it, I would say that there's no indications at this time, based off of the samples that were submitted in the project, that the current water quality within the South McDougall Flats is not potable. There's no indication of that at this time. It's, by all accounts and purposes, safe for human consumption.
Thank you. Is there any additional questions from council? No? Seeing none, Pamela, thank you so much for all of your work on this, and we do really look forward to the retest in 2027. I know in speaking with Alberta Health Services, in order to have that continual set of data to monitor ongoing how the water quality is very important. So we really thank you for your commitment to 2027 as well.
Yeah, and I really hope that AFIN will get that data dump that's been overdue for a while now. And then in the interim, those who are interested can do some additional sleuthing for themselves for the rest of Mountain View County as well.
Excellent. Well, again, on behalf of Mountain View County and the residents of South McDougall Flats, thank you very much for all of your work on this, and thank you for your presentation.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Excellent. So with that, we have a motion. I'm trying to get to the page. On page 142 up on the screen. Councillor Lutz.
I move that council receive the water testing project report for 2024 as information and that no further action be taken.
Thank you very much. Just on that, Margaretta, is there any follow-up to, we did send a letter to the residents to say the project's ongoing, submit your samples. Is there any plans to send out a similar, this is the results as a kind of a closed loop to this?
Yes, so we will be sending out letters to everybody that did submit their samples. So that letter will go out with a link to our website where the report will be available, as well as those links to the different websites.
Okay, and that's only to those that submitted samples.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we have a motion on the floor. Is there any further discussion on the motion? I'll call to question. All in favor? And that motion's carried, and we will break for lunch until, yes, sorry, we need to go in closed first. So I will take a motion. When we come back after lunch, we'll go into closed session. So moving into closed session, moved by Councillor Harris. Any further discussion? I'll call to question. All in favor? And that motion is carried. Council has now moved into closed session, which will end the public broadcast. Any motions made following the in-camera session will be captured within Council's meeting minutes, which can be found on the county's website within the next few days. Thank you for tuning in.